Okay, we're reconvening into open session. In closed session, and thank you for coming, welcome. See a few faces I don't normally see. And we have a brand-new student trustee, Caroline Moreno from San Andreas. Welcome.
Hi, welcome.
Actually, no, you're from Temescal.
San Andreas.
San Andreas. Okay, so Temescal, okay, I thought Nina.
She's taking over for B.
She's taking over for B, and Nina.
We don't have one.
Okay, so we have a changing of the guard. Here comes Jacob. So we'll have adult trustees, Nina has stepped down as student trustee for Temescal, and we'll be getting a new person from Temescal as well. But tonight, we have Caroline here in place of B, so welcome aboard. And we appreciate your service. All right, so in closed session, we covered a lot of territory. The personnel summary was approved unanimously. There's a copy in the back if anyone would like to take a look. And in regard to item 4A, the board ratified the resignation by retirement agreement and release by certificated employee number 102192. The agreement is available for review upon request. Right, so moving on, number 7 is approval of the agenda, including time limits. And we have a couple people in the audience tonight that have time restrictions. We have an auditor, and we have one of our principals with young children at home. So I would like to suggest that we move number 11, trustee reports. I know that Barbara in particular has a lot to report tonight, and it's been a month since we met, so I'd like to move that item to the very end of the meeting. And so we'll go right from student trustee reports on down the line and do trustee reports later. Is there anything else that needs to be moved on the agenda? And then the auditor, is that you? Okay, so we will move you up. I know you have a flight to catch, so we'll get you towards the front of the agenda as well. You're welcome. Yeah, and I anticipate that we'll be pulling something off consent that requires the Principal Luongo's, maybe, his attention. That's why you're here, so we'll get you up towards the front as well. So having said all that, do I have a motion to approve the agenda, including time limits?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Is there public comment on the consent agenda? We have just one person on that side of the room, and okay. I see no public comment on the consent agenda. Now's the time to approve the consent agenda. Are there any items that people would like to remove from consent? I would like to, which one is it? It's the WASC. Yes, 17F. I just want to hear a little bit more about the process and thank Principal Luongo for all of his efforts and whoever else was on his team.
Oh, good, that works for me. Thank you.
Do we need to pull the purchase orders, Chuck? Are you good with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And anything else? The Godby contract is on here. 17D.
I'm not going to, there's also a note about pending review by the attorney, so I'm fine with it.
Okay. I'm not fishing for anything to be pulled. I'm just, looking. Okay. All right, so we're just pulling item 17F, and we will put that towards the front. I'll give you the high sign when we're ready for that. Okay, too much paper. All right. So, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with item 17F pulled?
I move we approve the consent agenda with item 17F removed.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, student trustee reports. Let's have one of our seasoned veterans go first, and then Caroline can see how we do it. Violet, you look like I saw eye contact with you.
All right. Okay, so at Redwood, we have Jillian Wagner and Liam Anderson, who swept the California Division III Boys and Girls Cross Country State Championship. It's the first time in Division III history that both a boy and girl were, the winners were from the same school. This last week, our music department had its music performances of both choir and instrumental, and they were great performances and super well attended. Study week is this week, and the goal is to alleviate stress as well as focus on our academic goals as well. Mr. Hirsch, our tobacco use prevention staff coordinator, is creating a student-involved group to help reduce the use of e-cigarettes, Juuls, and Fixes, etc. And and last week we had our freshman and sophomore elections for the president, vice president, that kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Maddie?
We had boys water polo won state this year, so that's super exciting. And girls water polo were semi-finalists, so that's really great too. This week we are doing a kindness week instead of dead week. And that's where Wellness Center, Peer Resource, and ASB have sort of gotten together to do lots of activities to help students manage stress. So things they're doing is letting students make their own stress balls, which are like balloons filled with sand or earth or just things so that you can like squeeze them so that it relieves stress. And they also had Pause for Pause come in, and they brought a bunch of dogs, which the students could all pet and just generally hang out with. And I partook in that, and honestly, I felt a lot of my stress going away as I was petting these dogs. So that was really great. And then we're also going to have students be able to make glitter jars. And then Student Senate had its last meeting last week, but 2 weeks ago, we had Keith Jackson, the Director of Dynamic Solutions for Youth, come in and give a presentation about race at Drake and talking to Student Senate about how we can reach out to students of color and make them feel like their voices are being heard and that they're being represented in the Drake committees that actually make policies. So he gave a really good speech, and we're going to have him back, and we're really trying to work this year about reaching out to a lot of students of color because we haven't been doing great with that. And then for our last meeting in Student Senate, we sort of did an end of the year culmination, and all of our subcommittees reported what they had done. And the academics subcommittee, who's working on classes, they put out a survey to all of the students about what classes they would like to have. So now they're going to talk to teachers about what classes they're willing to teach, and if it's an AP class, they'll have to get training for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacob?
So, last week, Tam High had their second Unity Day, which was very successful. Almost everyone stayed on campus during lunch because there was free pizza, yoga, meditation, and condom certification, which was put on by our peer resource. So everyone really got like a feel of the campus community, which is the purpose of Unity Day. Also, we finished our canned food drive, which was wildly successful. We filled up 4 of the giant cans. Many of the tutorial classes had competitions, so we helped out many people in need during this holiday season. We finished our winter sports rally, which just super fun. It's always in the gym, and normally it has low attendance because people ditch it, but this year it was really well publicized, and everyone shown up and just had a great time. It was very humorous. The basketball team did the high school musical dance. So everyone had a great laugh. And this weekend, the basketball team had a tournament in Chico where they came in second place. The CTE has just finished their production of You Cannot Take It With You, which I hear went very well. I was unable to attend. The one acts are happening next semester, and drama is gearing up for it. The TAM's boys and girls soccer team won their games against MC over the weekend, and everyone's just gearing up for finals, like hoping to get through the year. This year we have renamed Dead Week Quiet Week because we do not wish for any of the students at TAM to be dead. We would just like them to have a peaceful study environment.
Okay, Caroline, anything going on at San Andreas?
Yeah, so at the end of November, we had a review from the California Model Continuation High School, and we're trying to get recognized as one. So on November 29th and 30th, we had a great visit from our review team, and I was actually talking to them as well, and I thought it went really, really well. We will receive a formal communication about the results on February 6th. Also, what happened at the end of November is Jamie Redford is a producer and a director, and he showed a screening of his documentary of Paper Tigers. And it was really great because it showed how kids with trauma, how it impacts a student's learning if they had trauma in their life. Also, something that happened was our science, psychology, and physiology classes took 14 kids to the Buck Institute, and we got to learn about aging. And we toured the facility, and we learned about the architecture and how the facility came to be. And we learned about STEM research, and we participated in a genetics lab experiment. And another big plus is 21 students earned 90% credit or more for the R2 grading period. Thank you.
Thank you. You did very well on your first report. Thank you. Okay, it is now time for the board president report, my last one, unless there's some sort of coup or something like that. So I wanted to thank my fellow trustees for giving me this opportunity to fill this role. In the past 12 months, I have learned a lot and have renewed respect for those who wield the gavel. This has been a tough but rewarding job. Actually, I crossed out job and put responsibility because I thought that sounded much more impressive than job. I am ready to sit at the end of the bench down there with Michael again, and I'm confident that our new board president will lead us well. It has been an honor and a privilege. Now it is someone else's turn. And then I also would wish that everyone has a very safe and relaxing winter break. That's it for me.
Can we have a coup and say something about?
No, that comes later.
I think we should.
Okay. Your turn.
No, sorry, Dr. Yoshihara, I'm going to break voting.
Go ahead.
Well, I'd promised myself, I was going to write a few notes down to thank Laura, and but I didn't need to because it's always on the tip of my tongue. This has been a really great 2 years, and this last year, working closer with you, you did bring some new elements to the board that actually have been very, very important, and a certain structure with goal setting. Starting out, having us to make sure we had unity of purpose and to help us move forward, being a board that may not agree on everything, but we do have unity of purpose, and we really do have you to thank for that, for having us sit down for a Saturday morning and working that out. And then I also really appreciated that we did the board evaluation, and that gives us a roadmap of things we all know we need to work on. And you instituted many of these protocols that really enable a board to function in a positive way, because it is challenging. It's not like any other, group of people trying to work together. And I just want to thank you so much. You've put so much time in. And the thing that I think has been very notable about you is that you care so deeply about doing the right thing and doing the right thing by students and everyone you work with. And I've seen you, think about something, work on it, and make really hard decisions. And it's all because in your heart, the thing that matters most is that you do the right thing by people. And this district has really benefited by that. So thank you.
Thank you. You're making me cry. Oh, man, this is turning into a roasting.
I only second those remarks, but to figure out and be responsive to such a diverse community and such a diverse, a time that is so intense and stressful in the world, and to bring in order that comes from your heart is what this district has always been about, in my experience. And you have renewed, I think, that kind of faith at a time when we need it. We need the humor, we need the love, but we need the structure and the organization. And you have brought that to us and also elevated our work in that process. Thank you.
Okay, you guys don't have to feel any pressure. No pressure.
I'll just say a couple of quick things. I think you've been magnificent as our president, and meeting after meeting, it's made me really proud to serve on this board. The way you've conducted the meetings, but also this past year, I think with your leadership has been a real step forward for us. After a long period of turmoil, a year of stabilization with Michael, and a year of normalcy, and now with you, really taking the initiative to start moving things forward, and in a direction, and getting this board in a place it ought to be. So, thank you enormously.
You were a little nervous when you first got this job.
You weren't even here for that.
And you more than rose to the occasion. Really, you showed true leadership. I thought you were very thoughtful in your approach to the job, very deliberate, more planful than I was, and that's a skill that I appreciate. I could go into other things. I just want to say, when you join me at this end of the table, it's not dead down here, it's quiet.
Quiet.
And you'll enjoy that. And I just want to say thank you to your family for,
Letting us have you.
for sacrificing the amount of time and energy and angst that you've put into this, because it does come to some extent to the expense of other parts of your life, and we appreciate that.
Thank you, all of you. Means a
Do
lot.
you wish to have the student trustees and
No,
Violet,
no.
who's been here the whole?
Of course. Of course I got it.
See, I couldn't resist.
I remember it switched really recently when I first got on the board that you became the president, so I didn't really know what was going on. But now that I understand that you are, I know now. But I just think the way that you've run these meetings and the way you're able to make everyone feel super comfortable with sharing what they think and presenting, it's incredible. And I think it's moved these meetings along beautifully, and I think everyone's very thankful that you were here. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
I just want to ditto Violet and say thank you so much for being so respectful to everyone on the board and all the presenters, and making this feel like a really safe environment for us.
I've only been on since the beginning of the year, but I've noticed you just you really mix a lot of professionalism. You run the board meetings really to the book, and it has a really professional feel. But then you also have this openness about you, so that none of us really feel afraid to speak up or speak our minds. And I think that adds so much to the board meetings, so that people are actually saying what they mean.
Thank you. Caroline, did you
How she's done the last 2 minutes.
Well, the 2 minutes that I've known.
In our house, we call this out loud presence, and I love out loud presence, so thank you all so much.
So ditto on that, and having worked with President Anderson over this last year, watched her grow into this role as well, and I think as she, I don't know if joyfully or wistfully moves off of this, has a greater appreciation for what the role of the president is involved with. And I know Michael has been involved in that, Laura now, and whoever the next one will be, sort of the differences and expectations of the president in working with the superintendent. So hopefully that was a positive experience, but certainly for me it was very beneficial. So I appreciate that. I watched her grow, like I said, through the year, from giving the welcome back speech back in August to all staff was a push on her, but she rose to the occasion, and up through here today, she never stopped. So appreciate that. I'll miss that, but look forward to whoever is picked here shortly. So thank you, Laura. On tonight, just a couple things. Back on September 26th, so a few months ago, the board was discussing the issue of field trips. This came up again at the last meeting, and the board had some questions regarding the ratio of chaperones to students. I wanted to share publicly that this is currently set at 10 students to each chaperone as per Board Policy Administrative Regulation 6153. While we are discussing at a staff level this level of supervision, particularly as it relates to international and high-risk field trips, the ratio of 10 to 1 is what currently is being enforced, and all of our teachers are aware of that. So as you see field trips come forward each of the evenings, please know that they're aware that the 10 to 1 is the current ratio. Hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have some items on there that relate to risk and emergency situations that can occur on field trips. I was hoping to have that tonight, but it's currently being reviewed by council, but we should have it by next meeting. I was also asked at a board meeting regarding, and this I think stemmed from our Beyond Diversity work, but even before that, regarding an estimate of transporting students from Marin City, some of you are aware of this, to Redwood High School, Temescal, San Andreas campuses. A little bit harder than initially thought, but we do have, I just wanted to share an estimate that this would be about $130,000 from one of our vendors for 180 days of service. That's basically each school day at roughly 3 hours per day for a single bus. So I think it's fair to say you probably need to multiply that by 2 if you're going to go morning and afternoon. This is only accurate within a factor of 2 and is used only for estimation purposes. So we did not get to a point where we're soliciting a contract or anything like that. But I just asked for a rough estimate. What would that cost, sort of in the big scheme of everything else as the board weighs budgets and so forth? You'll hear some of that later tonight. On November 28th, I, along with the visual and performing art teacher leaders at each of our comprehensive sites and Kim Stifler, had an opportunity to visit Berkeley High School. During that day, we got to see how the arts were integrated within the core curriculum. This is part of the ILSP, Integrated Learning Specialist Program, that Marin County, along with Alameda, is involved in. This helped us frame the opportunities that can exist in our district. The visual and performing art teacher leaders will work together to coordinate activities around this experience for the PD Professional Development Day coming up in March. You already heard around the San Andreas Model School, so good stuff there. I won't elaborate further. I just want to end with, I want to share out as we close the year that I'm grateful for the many opportunities I have to partake in the rich learning experiences with teachers in our classrooms across this district. I've been to many, and during my time, they include everything from mock trials to science talks to medical talks to conversations on race. The experiences are all a credit to the incredible dedication of our teaching staff to make the learning relevant and rigorous across our campuses. Thank you to our teachers and certainly our support staff, and continue to be so open to my regular visits to classrooms. I do wish everyone, as we wrap up this last board meeting, a safe, happy and safe winter break. And our next meeting will be on January 9th, 2018. Thank you. Communications, right? Yep. Communications tonight, you should have a PowerPoint from Whitehurst Mosher that was given at the November 14th meeting. You should have an email from Mr. Hedelman, teacher, dated November 16th regarding GPA calculation. And then you should have monthly enrollment comparisons dated December 5th.
Thank you. This is the time for public comment for items not on the agenda. I see one little yellow piece of paper already. We have a timekeeper, Mr. Christensen. He knows his role. This is not mandatory, but if you would like to fill out this form, it helps us to spell your name better and what have you. So before we get to public comment, while you collect your thoughts, I need to read this to abide by our protocols. The board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and provides this time for members of the audience to address the board on any school-related matter not on this agenda. The board can take no action at this time. Each speaker is requested to identify themselves prior to addressing the board and will be heard for up to 3 minutes. The presiding officer of the board shall determine, based on time constraints of the board, whether some time less than 3 minutes shall be allocated to individual speakers. And I think I only see a handful, so 3 minutes will be what we go with. I have one yellow form here from a Mr. David Potovsky. Would you like to address approach the podium?
Clock can't start.
No, won't you know?
Red light, green light,
Yeah.
yellow light, so
I think we've got, what is it, Lars? Is it the,
oh boy, you really do. Well, I will try and speak as quickly as possible. This is
Can you say your name again?
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Sure. I will make an introduction, but this is something that's important enough for me to brave a public audience here. So I will speak as quickly and as clearly as possible. So I'm David Potovsky, Tamalpais class of 1981. My wife is class of 1983. I'm a proud parent of a sophomore and a senior at Drake High School. Maybe a month ago, I emailed all of you to invite you to the chorus concert here at San Rafael High School, which is what I'm here to speak to you all today. I wanted you to see it for yourself. So in case you didn't make it, I have burned some DVDs for all of you to either play today or take home. I do encourage you to check it out and see why I am so pleased that you have this new program here at Redwood High School that is accessible to at least Drake students. I don't know about TAM. I have my daughter who's a senior. This is her 7th year with Susie Martone, who is the chorus teacher. She's been with Susie since 6th grade. She has auditioned and bid. Sorry, I didn't make enough. I believe it'll play either in your computer or at home on a DVD player. She's been with Susie since 6th grade. She has made there's a Western Regional Honors Choir that she has participated in. You have to audition 6 Western states, hundreds of kids. We travel to Pasadena. It is inspirational to see. So I don't know if you're aware of the program, but I'm a huge fan, obviously, of Susie Martone and what she's brought to starting at middle school, White Hill Middle School, and now Redwood at and Drake. She's a real gift to the music program, and I'm thrilled that Drake kids can participate, as there's really no comparable program right now that's available to them at all. She's experienced very specifically with choral music. She's credentialed. She seeks out and organizes events that take the kids out of the county to competitions and things like the Honor Choir and jazz festivals. So this is an amazing program. That's the great side of the coin. On the other side of the coin, I heard that it's possible that this program may not be available to Drake kids next year. It's a problem, as I see it, as that many kids only have a single gap in their schedule during the day at Drake, especially freshmen and sophomore, and they'll take a foreign language that enables them to get into the 30 seconds, into the UC California system. So no gap, no chorus at Drake. This is a night class. They can come in the evenings and do it here. They travel on their own dime and their own time to do this. So this is choice, and I believe that they wouldn't otherwise have it. Then there's the equity piece. There is a choral class at Drake taught by a teacher who is not credentialed nor experienced. I'm sorry, can I have another minute if there's nobody else here? I'll make it quick. Should I sit back down and put another yellow card in?
Yeah. I don't think you need to sit back down. Are you guys okay with another minute?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I've also met with my daughter and several other kids who've been in the program for a long time, and they basically said that they're not satisfied with the program, and that if they did have a choice between nothing and the Drake program, that they would do nothing. So, or they would do something outside that we would pay for as individuals. So the feedback, as I cornered Mr. Yoshihara at the choral concert and the Drake principal, I got great feedback on the program, but that the one problem is that there may not be room in the class. And I talked to the teacher, and she seemed to say that there's capability of 100 kids. Your limitation is on the size of the classroom, certainly not on the size of how many kids she can teach. So I'm here to urge you to reconsider this decision if a decision's been made, and to provide choice and equity to all students in the district, because this is an incredible program. I'm obviously very excited. My daughter's a senior. I don't have a dog in the hunt for next year, and I'm taking the time to really request that you reconsider this decision and open it up, keep it open to Drake students. So thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Usually we don't go back and forth, but thank you for coming. You did a very good job.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other people that would like to address the board? I see Ava. Yeah. I think we have your contact information, yes.
My name is Ava Crisanti, and I'm still trying to pursue some sort of resolution to the ongoing civil rights violation, which I consider a very serious civil rights violation at the Tamalpais High School swimming pool. I do want to note that at the request of a neighbor of mine in Marin City, I was asked to request that the issue of the barring of Marin City children from the Tam High swimming pool be put on this agenda so that other parents could attend and we could have, someone other than me speak about this. And that was denied to us by David Yoshihara. Subsequently, there was an attempt by Chris McCune, the Strawberry Seals coach, and the head of the Soma Aquatics to set up a meeting that would be at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, which makes it impossible for working parents to attend and makes it very hard for me to take off time from work too. Damian Morgan of Marin City and myself are working on an early 2018 meeting that will include ACLU representation, Marin Advocates for Children, and other working parents who want to see this fixed. I do want to bring up that since it was David Yoshihara's explanation that there are scholarships, and that resolves the entire issue of your noncompliance with California Educational Code 38134D with regard to access, affordable access to the Tam High pool. I submitted questions that remain unanswered from the Strawberry Seals. My first question was how many scholarships they distributed each year, the nature of these scholarships, i.e. the dollar amount, the number of sessions covered, and any contingencies involving parental volunteer obligations, the racial compositions of those receiving scholarships, i.e. what percentage of the scholarships went to white children and what, if any, percentage went to African American children, whether any of those scholarships went to children in nearby Marin City, which prior to the current arrangement had open and affordable access to the Tamalpais High School pool for several decades. 5, how is your group accounting for the scholarships on your 990 forms? 6, the racial composition of the Strawberry Seals. And 7, the nature and extent of any of your recruiting within Marin City for your team. And to date, I have received only, thank you, vague pablum-like responses from the president of the SEALs. And in fact, instead of just answering the questions, she complained that I was confrontational with her, and my questions were very plain and very respectful. But it does seem that there's a peculiar kind of Marin County entitlement whereby when you violate the civil rights of minority children and somebody brings it to your attention, you call them confrontational. That is unfortunately not acceptable. Thank you, Mr. Christensen.
Thank you, Ms. Crisanti. Are there any other members of the audience that would like to address the board at this time for items not on the agenda? Okay, thank you for those who did come. All right, next up, we have H. Hold on, I missed my papers. Yeah. I would like to, we talked about this when we approved the agenda. I'd like to move the WASC report, which is coming off of consent, item 17F, to the top so that our principal can get home. And then I'd like to have the audit report after that, and then we'll go on down the agenda. So first, I'm the one that pulled this WASC report. It's item 17F. I was very impressed with it. It was 40 pages long, or 42 pages. And I just wanted to get a little bit more information about who was involved in the report and how we are coming along at the other sites with our mid-term reporting for WASC. So I know that Principal Luongo is here. Perhaps he can answer the first part, and then maybe Tara the second part.
Hello, David Luongo, principal over at San Andreas High School. So pretty seamless and straightforward process for the San Andreas WASC report. And a lot of that has to do with the systems that are set up at the district level, district office. We have a number of people, Kim, Tara, and the office staff that are helping to put the data together and send it out to the principals, and then make sure we have the templates to follow. So it's straightforward. And then because we do the SIPSA, the Single Plan for Student Achievement, every year, and we're monitoring it, it makes it really easy to align the two plans, which is what we used as our format for putting the document together. And then our leadership team meets every week, so we're able to kind of go over what is in the plan, make sure we're compliant, we're sticking to our goals. And our different stakeholder groups we're really fortunate at San Andreas to have a lot of support. And although we don't have a lot of evening parent meetings, our parents are really accessible by phone and communicate with us on a regular basis, so we're able to get input and find out what people's feedback about the school is and make sure we're making the necessary improvements. So put that all together, and I sit down for a number of hours and write a nice 40-page report. So that's basically what happens. And then in February, the visiting committee, a 2-member team, will be out for 1 day hanging out with us, and very similar to the model schools visit, which we had just finished up in November.
So you are the one that pulled this all together, all these nice graphs and all that?
Thanks to Alina in the district office. She made them look pretty. I put them in the report and did some typing in terms of analysis, and as a staff, we looked at the data. But the report itself, the physical piece of paper, yes, I compiled that.
And so now I can't remember reading through this, and I didn't read it sentence by sentence, but I picked out the nuggets. The next step then, after you've completed this midstream progress report, then they come back and do the full analysis in how many years?
The whole district did it together as one team initially, and so they got a 6-year with a mid-cycle revisit. This is the 3-year revisit, so then another 3 years, then each site. And we've moved off, I don't want to speak incorrectly, but I believe we've moved off the whole district doing it together as one, and each of the sites will be responsible for doing their own WASC report at the end of the next 3 years, similar to what we're doing on the mid-cycle, but it'll be differentiated by site. Did I speak correctly on that? Yeah.
So did you find this process helpful as principal?
As a principal, as a leader, I think it's an important process because it's a check and balance for us to make sure we're sticking to the agreements and the vision and the plan that we have in place. And so oftentimes you can get caught up in the day-to-day. This brings it back together to make sure we're sticking to that plan. Very similar to the SPSA, the Single Plan for Student Achievement. If we didn't have it in place, we wouldn't have that checks and balance component. And so I think it's really important for the leaders in the district to have that, and then not bog down the staff with the nitty-gritty of the actual report building process, but it's the content piece that they need to be aware of and the ongoing discussions about what's in it, particularly the goals and the action items.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other comments or questions? Yes?
David, did you learn something in putting together this report that you didn't know before you went through this process?
There were no surprises, and I've done this is probably my 7th report that I've been a part of up to this point in my career. So for me, if there are surprises that come up in it, then that means you haven't been paying attention to your report from when you did it in the past. What's an important piece to it is a reminder, like, ooh, what progress have we made or not made, and which things do we need to make sure we're focusing on to get done by the end of the 6-year process. So the only things in there, the surprises it's the data analysis piece that's always the heaviest part of it, and then figuring out how do we really start to make significant impact on decreasing the achievement gaps, because it so consistently shows up as a major gap, and how can we try to reduce that gap and make significant impact on the students that we serve. So it's not a surprise, but it is a stark reminder of the work that lies ahead, and a little push.
Any other comments or questions?
This may kind of dovetail on the model schools, but I think you know from what I said, and I guess I'd like to make it public, that this has been a work in progress, that the district has, I think, recognized these gaps a long time ago, whatever the regimes in place that existed before, and to see it culminating now in its fruition, to see the depth of the work that you've all done as it continues, and then, of course, has implications for our support of your work as well. I just can't tell you how grateful I am for the progress that San Andreas has made on behalf of kids. Good job.
Really appreciate that, and really appreciate the love and support everybody's been giving us, so thank you.
Any other comments? So before we make a motion and approve this, I did have a question about where we are with the other sites on their mid-cycle reports.
Yeah, hi, everybody. So January and February is basically the short answer. The first January meeting, January 9th, you will see Tamascal's midterm report. Then on January 23rd, Redwood and Drake will have their midterm reports. And then on February 9th, Tam will have their report. And then the visits all happen sort of between February and I think the end of March-ish.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Are there any questions from the audience? Any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve this, what is it? Approval of midterm WASC report for San Andreas High School.
I move we approve the midterm WASC report for San Andreas High School.
Is there a second?
Second.
Student trustees, would you like a preferential vote on this? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that was unanimous. And all of us, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Principal Luongo, you are excused. All right. Yes. Next up, I'd like to make sure that our auditor makes her plain, and so that item is H. Thank you. Yes, item 16H, we're going to do ahead of the report on goals, so you can make your plain.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. Thank you for having me here. This is a busy time of year, and you guys are actually a month ahead of schedule. These reports are due December 15th, and then they typically go to the board in January. So you guys finished your audit pretty early and provided all the necessary information on time. So it's a busy time for us right now, otherwise. So I'm not going to go into the details of the audit report. What I am going to go through is the opinions, a little bit about the procedures that go into those opinions, and finally, I just want to point out a few major GASBs that have occurred. Those are your GASB pronouncements related to the net pension liability and your OPEB asset for this district. So I just want to point that out, and I'll make it quick. So the first and most important part of the audit report is really on page 2. And it's the second paragraph, and it's our opinion on your financial statements. Oh, there it is. So page 2. It's under the opinion section. And we say, in our opinion, we agree with these financial statements. We don't have any issues with the numbers presented here. We audited them and feel really comfortable. If we disagreed, you'd see a paragraph under this, and we talk about what the issue was. So you have an unmodified opinion, which is the best possible opinion you can get. Okay? The next piece is the 3 additional opinions we put out. So in addition to the opinion over your financial statements, we go to page 77. This is the report on internal controls over financial reporting. And here we're looking at the controls that you have on this financial reporting process. Is there a journal entry process? Can anybody just make journal entries? Is there a bank rec process? Are you doing bank recs to make sure what matches what you say at the bank is actually at the bank? Accounts payable, sorry, I know, it's scrolling all the way down. But the most important part is you guys also have an unmodified opinion here. So what we do is we go through a number of your transactions and we substantiate it. We do it by testing the controls, pulling samples, and then in addition, substantiating the balances in your financial statements. So there's a few pieces of this. So we're scrolling through this large report, but what we do have is a large number of transactions we're pulling to get this information. And in that, we're also reviewing and assessing your internal controls throughout the district. Okay? The second opinion is your opinion on federal compliance, and this is page 79. Okay? So on page 79, the Office of Management and Budget requires that we audit certain programs every year, and they tell us exactly what we have to audit and how we have to audit. For your district, we did the special education program, your IDEA, and for that, we make sure that you spend the funds appropriately. So we're pulling a large number of expenditures, all salaries charged, making sure, not all, a large number of salaries charged, and verifying that your time reporting, making sure they're appropriate, and following guidelines. So they have their own audit program. And again, you have an unmodified opinion. You don't want to have a finding here, so.
Thank you.
But the third final piece is the report on state compliance, right? So the state also has a number of procedures. If you go to page 82 and 83, and I don't know if you want to keep scrolling down, the state gives us really specific procedures related to attendance, independent study, continuation, instructional time, and they have a state audit guide, and we go through that. That is probably between ASBs and this where you will find the most findings for districts across the state. Luckily, you don't have one here this year.
I think that's a first.
It is, and we went through pretty detailed.
I don't mean that you should go back and look for more, but
No, actually, you didn't have any findings in 2016, so it's not the first. You might have had some comments in a management letter, and but as actual findings in your financial statements, no, you didn't have any in 2016.
I think that it wasn't quite a finding, but
yes,
it was
there are some discussion.
a flag.
Yes, a flag. There are some minor things that you do come across. And we would let you know if we came across anything that we had any concern over. But again, we're pretty thorough. We're big ASB testers. That's our specialty. And attendance, unduplicated counts. And again, this is probably a lot of testing involved in this area, and you have an unmodified opinion. I do want to say that everything we asked for was provided in we sent out our items requested list. I'm still waiting until this day for many districts to send me stuff, and the reports are due on the 15th. So if that gives you any indication, we did receive everything we asked for in a timely fashion, which tells us that you are organized on your end, because when we're not receiving those, that's another red flag, right? So we send people, sometimes we send districts items requested list a month in advance, and we won't receive anything. So those are the big pieces. Do you guys have any questions related to any of the opinions or any of our procedures?
I don't. I was just noting the ASB, and that's all I had. Does anyone else have any other questions? Student trustees, did you read the full audit? Have any questions? Yeah, they're all good. They're good.
Pages.
Typically,
So who should we thank for providing you all the information?
I mean, there's a lot of
Dr.
people,
Yoshihara,
right?
yeah.
So at the sites, it's the attendance clerks. We go through a lot of detail, and the ASB advisors, the ASB bookkeepers. your director of fiscal, Daniel Ellison. I mean, there's a lot of people involved in the process
thank
and
you.
all different curriculum,
great.
free and reduced meal program, for unduplicated counts. So this is not just, this is a lot of people involved in gathering, but definitely Danielle Mannion was able to get us all the information and gather it. But we do go out to your sites. And
How long does the audit take, end to end?
the audit physically takes 2 weeks here, so one time in spring and one time in the fall. But there are a lot of number of hours to compile a report of this size, and in addition of reviewing and preparing. So I don't have the estimated hours for this particular district, but it's a long time. But 2 physical weeks out here, basically. The only thing I did want to show you, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I do think it's important that you notice, page 41, is there any way we can scroll back? It's just your net pension liability for STRS and PERS. I just really want to put that out there so people know that what they're seeing is this large liability, and that's why eventually your net position might end up in a negative over time because of the addition that's being added each year. And so if you go to page 41, sorry. I know, I thought in a PDF document you should be able to go to page, but it might be a little different. So you guys last year had a balance of 57 million. There was an addition of 10.9 million to that liability for an ending liability of $68 million. And that is not a liability you can reduce. Sorry. Yeah, 41 on the document. Oh, sorry. Yeah. One more. Keep going. There it is. So and this is just going to increase by that amount almost every year, so it was 57 million, an increase of 10.9, and now you have $68 million, and there's nothing you can do to deduct it, right? That's the STRS and PERS liability. The good news is you are one of the few districts that is funding your other post-employment benefits. So you have an OPEB asset, and that is pretty rare, and you guys put money in a trust to cover that. So you actually don't have an other post-employment liability, which only a handful of districts have. So.
Can I just clarify for the board? So, again, my understanding, I haven't been in this a while. So this is a recognition of a liability that encompasses, state employee and employer obligations to the larger pension system.
Right.
So it's not saying we meaning the collective district has this amount of money that needs to be put in, but the sort of for all the employees in the district, this is
state.
Current and future obligations for STRS in this case, or is it both STRS and PERS?
It's STRS and PERS.
STRS and PERS. And part of what is partly attributed to the increased rates for employers going forward to address this long-term liability.
Exactly. So it's a way to make it more transparent, and then it's based off an actuarial study is how the number is derived.
Yes.
And they're on STRS and PERS reports on their websites.
So this is relatively new. This used to not be reported.
Yeah, it's GASB 68. Last year was the first year. Or, no, 2 years ago, 2015.
So if the board asks, how come we haven't seen it before?
You have, but
Not reported
this way. So.
So how does this relate to the fact that we're being asked to put in additional contributions every year from our general fund
That's
towards
your other
STRS and PERS liability?
Okay, so Trustee Friendman is referring to the statutory requirements for employee and largely employer contributions. So the relation
Is the increase in rates.
so the increase in rate is related to the ability to pay this down over the long term.
Exactly. So I suspect the reason that this became a GASB and became more transparent is somewhat to justify the increase in rates. I have a feeling that they're all tied together. So hopefully that increase in rates will somewhat reduce the liability. But then again, it depends on the number of the people in the pool, and there's a lot of factors that go into determining that liability. So, and if we don't have people paying into it, I mean, there's a lot of detail. But yes, the rates are increasing.
So this was always there as a liability. It's the GASB that requires us to
Report it
publicly
on our
recognize it on the government-wide financial statements.
Exactly.
Yeah, I understand that, but this is just an identification of the liability, albeit increasing almost $11 million last year, and you're saying it's going to increase another $10 to $11 million every year forever. Yeah, so,
Not forever.
but
I mean, you're never going to fully fund PERS and STIRS. I don't envision it happening that way. I don't know how, I mean,
Right.
there's always, it's like Social Security. So yes, for now, that's how, I mean.
No,
that-
I
that-
understand
that
that,
is-
but my
no, I
question
agree.
was, but where I was trying to go with this was, this doesn't indicate how much we've set aside in reserves to pay this debt. This is just
No, this is not.
identification of the debt.
Yeah, yes, and we do not set aside for this particular fund.
No, you set aside for your other post-employment benefits. So those are your other type of pensions offered at your district, not the STIRS and PERS.
So the long view on this, Michael, is, again, it depends who you talk to, but the argument that the governor might make is the increase in employer contributions is designed to draw down the long-term liability over, I would say, a 20, 30-year period. Again, one could argue their methodology on assumptions, but whatever, 7%,
Yes.
increase or whatever. So that's the whole argument, right, of how much increase are you going to assume, mortality of the pool,
The
so
number of
forth.
people, exactly.
So whether this will go on forever is debatable, but certainly in the near future, 8 to 10 years, there will be significant increases before there's a leveling off and potentially a decrease if it's funded.
Right, if they increase the rates, and then you will have to pay those rates at the district level too. You're contributing to those rates. So that's how it would get reduced, and then the number of people in the pool would be another factor in reducing it, and then,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, but so now that you've effectively drawn, now I'm confused, right? We have our first interim budget report, okay? And in our first interim budget report, there are 3 charts, 2 for STIRS, 1 for PERS, that talk about, the increase in costs every year. And I believe the increase we've talked a lot about our annual contributions and how the state has required that we make additional contributions, right? And which is obviously tied to the assumed rate of return and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't understand how that doesn't, how can that not relate to, isn't that intended to put aside reserves to pay down this future liability?
It is, again, until the actuarial determines that and they feel that it's funded at a level. But in addition, that is the goal. Like David says, it is the goal to get there. So you will get there. Is that going to happen probably in the next couple of years? I don't think so. I haven't seen the actuarial studies. They get done every year to determine that. It depends on a lot of factors. That the goal is to get to that point, yes. So hopefully there will be a reduction, right? But they've been hoping for a reduction for a really long,
You mean a reduction in the long-term liability?
yes,
And instead it's going up $11 million?
for now.
So these amounts here are set at the state level. So STIRS rates are set annually by the STIRS board.
Yeah.
So
It's also the cost of, there's a lot of, it's like the healthcare cost trend rate that affects it. There's a lot of factors that go into affecting the STIRS and PERS number. I'm not going to lie, I don't know how it's calculated entirely. We can go through the actuarial
Right,
study.
but I understand that, and I understand that this is the entire liability, right, of the district looking forward for,
yes, for all current and future employees.
All current
or
and future
not
employees.
future, but current employees vested in the system.
right, but, right.
And we don't have a lot of control over these rates per se.
Right,
They're-
no, you
they're
have
set
no
statu-
control.
Whereas you'll hear later in first interim, the other post-employment benefits, we do have control over. which
Exactly.
We'll talk it, but this one, we don't. We're just asked to
So I'll-
recognize it.
Okay, this is a question that I flagged in the first interim report, so maybe I'll ask it then when,
Yeah.
maybe
This
the
is-
audit isn't really the right time
this is
for it.
your government-wide financials. You're not going to see this number in your fund financials, so you're not going to see it in the general fund.
I understand.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, this is right, I understand. We're talking about a 3-year, right, this year and 2 subsequent year financials, so I get it. I'm just trying to determine how well we're doing in terms of putting money aside.
You can't.
You can't for this.
You can in here, right, but we'll talk about it in the context
Oh,
of the
how
first
you're doing
interim.
But you can't. You can't do anything.
But you referred to other post-employment benefits, and I think I don't know if that's what threw you, but that's what threw me, because I thought that's what we were
Yeah.
talking about, the same
Maybe
thing.
that's what the issue is. So you guys also offer other types of post-employment benefits, not STIRS and PERS. And for that, you are putting money aside, and you actually have an asset and not a liability in that case, which again is only a handful of districts have. So you actually are funding that and putting money aside. And so that's why you don't see a liability for your other
I
post-employment.
understand. We'll talk, I'll ask my
Okay,
questions in
sorry.
the context of the first.
I
interview. This
apologize
isn't
for
the-
not
This
clarifying.
isn't the right place for it, but I'm really glad that you pointed out the fact that we've got a $200 million debt. That's going to make us, sleep well. Thank you.
Well, I mean, your tax revenues will pay the 117 million.
I mean,
your-
for the bonds.
Yes, your tax revenues, taxpayers, right?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
And we thank our taxpayers for that.
Yes, thank you, taxpayers.
And if you'd like to move into our district and contribute to that, you're more than welcome.
You sound like a great
Did-
place, so maybe one day.
You didn't find any piles of money anywhere?
I couldn't, no, I looked. but
Okay,
nothing.
because, we could slide you a little something, and no. But,
Oh,
yeah, we're
man.
looking for more funds.
No, but again, you guys, overall, it was a great experience, and I just want to thank the district for that. So this was our first year of the audit, and we actually kind of enjoyed it, and we hope the district enjoyed it a little bit, so.
I appreciate that you did not kill a bunch of trees and give us paper reports, that we know how to find this
Perfect.
audit online. All right, are there any,
I just, the point you just made about you have looked for money and you didn't find it. Is that accurate?
No,
I mean, in the sense that, because we look at these numbers, they're different every time, I mean, they move. And I think it creates a situation that we want to trust that these numbers are reliable.
Mhm.
Because we're making decisions that affect people's lives. And so I appreciated your remark, and I appreciate the backup in so many checks and balances.
right,
So thank you for that.
of course, of course.
okay, any other questions from the board? Is there any public comment? I'm just looking at the handful of people. Okay, so I would entertain a motion to approve the Tam Union High School District Financial Audit Report for 2016-17.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, student trustees, I'm looking for a preferential vote on this audit. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all those in favor say aye up here. Aye.
Aye, up here. It's for last meeting.
All right, that motion carried. Thank you. I hope you catch your plane. Okay, now we are going to follow the agenda as printed. So we have Dr. Topier on the report on goals.
Good evening, everybody. I do want to take my opportunity to thank President Anderson as well for all of your work. It's my father was a lifelong politician, and he ended his political career on a school committee because he felt it was the most important way a person could give back to their community, and I couldn't agree more. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have not so good news tonight, unfortunately. I am sharing the chronic absenteeism percentage by school and student group. Sorry, I'm the chronic absenteeism percentages by school and student group. So I had mentioned that these became available, embargoed 2 weeks ago, and they became public last week. So they are now up on our 5x5 is what they call it, on the state dashboards, which we'll get into in the spring. But Mary, could you? Thank you. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of our absenteeism percentages, as you can see here, by the district and then by school and also by group at each school. This is our baseline data as far as the state is concerned. So moving forward each year, the state will gather this data. And of course, the idea is that we will improve our attendance rates. As a reminder, chronic absenteeism is a student who is absent for 10% or more of the school days of a school year for any reason. So chronic absenteeism does not distinguish between excused or unexcused. So that doesn't matter why you're absent, except for if you are on school business, that does not count as an absence from school. So these are all the percentages, as you can see. They kind of mirror our achievement gaps also. So it's not a coincidence that if you are missing a lot of school, you're less likely to be as successful. But we need to dig deeper and find out why these gaps exist and why students aren't attending at the same rates. It can speak to our climate and culture, if you look at who is attending and who is not. It's also an opportunity for us to reach out to parents and students, as Dr. Yoshihara pointed out earlier, and look at barriers. Are there barriers to getting to school? Are there barriers to attending school? Are there things that we could do to help students attend more regularly? So me and the attendance committee will be presenting the new chronic absenteeism policy in January to the board for first read and adoption. And a lot of what we learned is that one of the most effective things to do is frequent communication with parents and guardians around attendance, that you're making sure that attendance is a high priority for the administrators, for the parents, and that you are frequently communicating. As I've shared a couple of times, parents often report that they're surprised as absences accumulate. They're surprised when you call them and say, your student has 9 absences. They're like, no. You're like, yeah. If it happens sporadically and not all at once, they tend not to be tracked as easily. Yeah.
I wasn't sure you were going to start singing. Do you track absences that are, for instance, half day? I'm wondering if you look at students that maybe don't come back after lunch.
We do. So these are full day absences, but we also track period absences. And in the chronic absenteeism policy, you will see that one of our recommendations is that 9 absences, 9 full day or 9 in any one course would trigger some sort of parent conference and attendance plan be put in place for the student. So that's halfway to the chronic place.
Go ahead.
I have 2 things. One, I think that 9 absence is too late. I think the impact on the youngsters, the curve in terms of youngsters' learning is seriously impaired after 9. I'd like to look at that number being reduced, if possible, because that concerns me. You know that I've had a concern about this particular area for a long time. My question is, I have seen communication from the school, typically principals' reports, to the community, to the parents. I've heard students talk about, there's the attendance is much more, or they're paying more attention to it. I'm assuming that's true. What I want to know is, how has the SARB process been modified to support, to sound like it's more supportive rather than punitive? Is it being used effectively?
Is it being used effectively is a good question. We have not had a lot of success with the SARB process in the past in this district, in the sense that it hasn't really improved attendance for those students. So, they have made adjustments to it to make it seem more supportive. I think in this climate, having a probation or police officer in the room is not advisable, which is part of the SARB process, because many families do not feel that that is a support. So finding ways that we can partner with the parents around an attendance plan that they feel they can buy into and support, and so that is one thing that they're trying. The 9 is sort of the top, right? You have to have contacted them by 9.
By 9.
Yeah. So that you don't, we should not have any student who shows up with, 24 absences and nobody contacted the parent, so it's by 9. And even, that is going to require a shift in priorities around what our admin spends time on. That's a lot right now. That's a lot of phone calls. That's a lot of conferences. That's a lot of, attendance plans to set up.
I would also like to point out, however, that there are model programs, example with the SARB, that do work with a host of support service people, and you know that. And I'm just curious as to why in our district, those folks probation and so on are perceived as not being helpful when up and down the state model SAR programs include
Right, and they have
all
in
those
our,
folks.
in our district in the past.
Successful.
And I'd have to dig into that a little more. I think I can speak to my experience when I was an assistant principal, and that is that every student I SARB'd was a student of color and an English language learner. So that's, probation in the room for some populations is not comfortable.
So
Or
it's being looked at,
understandable.
is what you're telling me. People are looking at, okay?
Yeah, for sure.
Any other comments or questions?
Could we see at some future meeting, or maybe just in a board communication, how this compares over a period of time? 4 years, 5 years, do we have comparable data?
We can try to pull it together. This is the first time that we have reported this to the state. This is the first time this data has been available to us in this format. This is our baseline year. So it wouldn't be exactly the same. We could do our own analysis from our data.
How we're doing trend, do you have a sense of how we're doing trend-wise with respect to chronic absenteeism?
Yeah, and I do. And I can tell you that overall absences have risen over the last 5 years, more so than the population. And for us, a overwhelming majority of the absences are excused, which chronic absenteeism doesn't matter, but for us, how to manage, and that's one of the reasons why we felt we needed to overhaul the old policy. The old policy really only dealt with unexcused absences. So we would have, you could have 47 absences and there was nothing. It was just, you're supposed to have a doctor's note, but, it didn't have any teeth. So in our district, it is more of a excused absence issue. Not that there aren't unexcused absences, they are, but something like 77% of missed instruction in 15-16 were excused absences.
That was going to be my question, is I was wondering what the breakdown was between excused and unexcused, and is that across the district?
That's the district. That was that's.
So, like at San Andreas and Temescal, you have 77% excused?
That I don't know. At San Andreas, I'm not sure. I'd have to dive into that a little more deeply.
Yeah, a lot of.
Can you email us this chart?
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But it's coming back in January with more detail, right?
Yeah. I just wanted you to be aware that this is now public information and give it to you in a snapshot.
The fact that it's such a high percentage of excused absences does make it seem, by educating the parents the start of every school year and throughout, I can imagine many parents just write a note and they don't really understand the significance of it and lose track.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that it's not going to be going to take too long to turn the vote around.
That's our hope. And I think by pulling programs like wellness into the equation, that a lot of what we hear and from our, our California Healthy Kids is the levels of anxiety are up. And so the idea of how can we sort of holistically solve this problem?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a conservative Trump supporter, but, I have,
Here I go.
my last few years of teaching, I'd hear from, my child needs a mental health day, again and again and again and again for the just minor little things. The cat's sick, she's upset. And it adds up. It just, it adds up. And I think it's a matter of communication with parents, that this excusing students from school for really minor stuff is not in their best interest. And I think they do it because they think it is in their best interest. But, enough is enough with some of this stuff.
Just for future, I'd also be curious, when you look at the chart, it's pretty, I'm looking at the differences among the schools, right? There's some, obviously San Andreas stands out. Those are pretty frighteningly high numbers there. But there's also a difference. Statistically, it's hard to say that there's enough of that there's much of a difference between Tam and Drake, but there does appear, just at first look at the chart, to be a difference between attendance at Drake and Tam as compared to Redwood.
Redwood.
And I'd be curious to know, why that is. Is it,
Yeah.
I would speculate. I'm not going to speculate, but in the future, as we're thinking about, what lessons can we learn from the data?
Right.
Why that might be, and whether there are lessons to be learned at Redwood that could be applied at some of the other schools. I don't know.
Yeah, and those are all good questions that we'll be hopefully looking into a little more deeply. As I said, this data has been available to us for about 2 weeks.
Student trustees better be at school tomorrow.
I have a remark to make about San Andreas. My understanding is that, at least from my experience, was that youngsters who have attendance problems lose credits, and then they end up at San Andreas with the same attendance pattern issues. So it's likely that those numbers are going to be astronomically higher, given the population's behavior.
Yeah, I would expect,
Yeah.
it's not a surprise they're higher.
Yeah.
I didn't have any expectations necessarily that it would be,
Right.
that much different, but it's certainly, Barbara, what you're saying is correct, that one would be expected to be higher.
Yeah. And we did do a very cursory glance at other continuation schools in the state, and it's pretty consistent. Those, because we were like, whoa. But those, the data there is pretty consistent with most continuation schools. I would say hoping to find, like, who's got the answer out there, and I do think David Luongo and the staff at San Andreas have made a monumental effort this year to improve attendance, and anecdotally, attendance is much improved over there this year. Caroline, yeah, would you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
I think they've done a lot of culture building. I think they've done a lot of great campus activities, and when you go over there, you can sense it, that there's more kids are on campus more regularly.
And I think it's worth noting that these figures capture students who've missed 10 or more days, but it doesn't capture students who've missed 20 or more days. So at a place like San Andreas, if a student had, missed 35 days at TAM and they come to San Andreas and they miss 12, they still appear on this chart, even though there's been a significant improvement in attendance.
It's true. The attendance trails the kid.
And, I've also felt for a long time that, with some students, they miss 1 day out of 5, and it's, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem. But another way of looking at it is that they showed up 4 days out of 5, and that's a miracle.
Yeah.
The other change that seems to have occurred over the last 5 years is the more availability to access online work. The teachers have everything online, notes, assignments. And then we do have some students that we've encouraged to take online classes. So I'm wondering if it sounds like it's going to be lots of issues to look at.
Yeah.
It's easier for them to stay home. They don't have to, it's not as much effort to go get the assignment.
It's true. And, and obviously we're saying that here we see that attendance, and there does seem to be a correlation between attendance and achievement. But I agree with you that, we are also entering into a different era in education where it's not just based on seat time, right? That we hope that kids can learn anywhere, and that it's not that they have to learn in a classroom. However, they have to be, present in the classroom, at least to be part of the engaged process. So it is, and it is, for us as a high school district, it's interesting too, because a lot of the information on chronic absenteeism, it is very much an indicator of later success, like kindergarten chronic absenteeism. There are certain markers, along the way that, a kindergartner who's chronically absent is far less likely to be reading by the end of third grade. So there are some, so that's another sort of trend for us to look at. Is it would be nice to dig into this and see where are some of these trends long term, because those students also have a much less success rate in ninth grade. So there's these indicators throughout a child's schooling career that are very important to disrupt. Yeah.
Well,
one more thing. I'm also aware of how much it's impacting project-based instruction classrooms. one day out in group process
Right.
can certainly destabilize learning for 3 other people.
Well, and you're not getting feedback in a timely manner. You're not getting that enriched social learning environment. There's a lot of aspects to it that are important.
Okay, this was supposed to be a 5-minute
Sorry, yeah.
update. This is a little teaser for January, but obviously we're interested in the data, and it's so important to all of our LCAP goals. So thank you for this one-page bit of information that we will hear more about in January. Thank you. Okay, next up is item B, which I believe we are tabling. Is that correct?
We're tabling with comment. And that is that Leslie and Corey and Ann and I have been meeting regularly, but we have lacked sufficient time, owing in part to the very early start of the board meetings at 4:25. So between the end of school and 4:25 and time it takes to get from San Andreas over here, we haven't accomplished as much as we have wanted to, and have met the deadline that we imposed on ourselves. But we hope fervently to have a report for you in January for the whole board. And we're looking at a small number of areas within that survey. One of the primary ones being, and one of the biggest concerns of teachers is classroom space, and the shared classrooms. So that's that's really a high concern, and communication. Communication from the board, communication from administrators down to teachers about, what is being done. Because a lot of the issues that appeared in the survey that were of concern to teachers were actually issues that have, that are being addressed in an ongoing fashion. So communication's, something we're going to be looking at.
So it sounds like we are going to table this until January. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, so we need a motion to table this agenda item.
I move we table the discussion of the Town Federation of Teachers survey to January.
Is there a
Second.
Student trustees, would you like a preferential vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, up here at the front, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Right, that's been tabled. I'm going to just start packing up. Next item. I can't do fast yet. Just getting ready to move.
Okay, members of the board, we are that time of the year for the organizational meeting, discuss process for the officers. So in this district, we will select a president and clerk who I will work closely with over the coming year. For our public and our student trustees, as a bit of background, the president is the one that I work most closely with in regards to communications and giving a heads up with regards to anything from sort of a campus security issue to, an impending legal settlement issue. Usually I talk those over with the board president initially. They do get out to the rest of the board, but the dialogue with the board president usually occurs beforehand. The board president is also considered the spokesperson for the board. So whenever a student news group or the media wants comment from the board, we do, I think, a good job at referring them to the board president. So the board president acts as spokesperson for the board, much like I act as spokesperson for the district. So that's an important role. It is, I think, the most time-demanding role of the positions up there, and a good experience for trustees to go through that. So we will be taking nominations and selecting a president shortly. The role of the clerk is important as well, in that both the clerk and the president meet with myself about a week before each of these board meetings to set the agenda. So between the three of us, we talk about the items slated to be presented. They provide feedback about items they think would be helpful to have on there, items they may not want on there right away, and questions that they may have on the agenda. So it's an important role in that it also has a time commitment as well. That's a standing item. So even though they spend a lot of work up here tonight discussing this, these two particular positions spend additional time in regards to that agenda setting. And while we meet formally for a short period of time, there's also a lot of back and forth between that meeting and the eventual posting of that agenda as well. They're involved in seeing numerous drafts of that. So those are the two positions of which we will consider here tonight, and they last for the duration of the calendar year, so it will cross school years. So as students, as you student trustees are on for the school year, our elected officials will remain on through the summer until roughly this time next year when we go through this process again. So there are no rules with regards to who is or who isn't can be president. Typically it rotates, but we leave that up to the board to decide. So I will, unless there's any questions, we will move on to D in the nomination process. Some districts do have specific guidelines with regards to rotation, I've learned. Just sort of as an anecdote, I had lunch today with president of College of Marin. They have a 7-member board, which is a little bit more complicated. And he said before he got there, the annual organizational meeting was a tense meeting to have. It was an all-out sort of ugly night, and he did not look forward to it at all. So when he got on, one of the things they agreed to is a rotation of the board members. And essentially, at that meeting, with 7 members, they had some kind of, pick a numbers or whatever, short straw. So what they had is they just listed the 7 positions, and he said whoever got the first pick just picked which slot of the 7 they wanted to be in, top being president, then working your way down. And he said without exception, basically whoever picked filled in the first empty slot. And so therefore, going forward, whenever this occurred 4 or 5 years ago, they just rotate through. So whoever, just like a rotation, whoever's in second position moves up to first moves down, and there isn't a lot of discussion. And that was just something that they do, as a community college. But again, every district is different in regards to that. We don't rotate, so that's why we take nominations. So leave it up to the board to decide how you want to handle that this evening. And we'll move on to D, with your permission, Ms. Anderson.
This is the strangest thing that we do, because we have to do all of our board business in public. So
you do.
Yes. So I think that what we did in the past, I didn't look at the video, but I think that we just talk about who wants to be the president. Typically, it's been the clerk, and I would be surprised if we didn't end up nominating Leslie. But I would like to hear Leslie say that she would be up for this job.
Didn't I tell you?
No, it's going to be a very bad night.
No, I would be delighted. I would enjoy being the board president.
Okay. Would anyone else like to be the board president? I can hear a pin drop. Okay.
You'll get out of class to go to meetings with David.
Well, I think that Leslie would be a great board president, so I nominate Leslie. And I guess, does anyone else want to make a nomination? Or I guess I could make a motion.
Preferentially.
So I make a motion that Leslie Lundgren is our next board president.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All right, a preferential vote from the student trustees. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, up here, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yes, so I think I get to hand this over to you officially.
Thank you.
So-
And I think, do we do the shuffle after the clerk?
After the clerk, yeah.
Okay, so same sort of format. Who wants to be the clerk?
I do.
Chuck
Ah, we
wants to
have
be the
Chuck
clerk.
I nominate Chuck as clerk.
Oh, that was really quick.
Second.
Okay, that was
Properly moved and seconded?
Michael. Okay, there's a motion and a second. No, wait. So now there's a discussion. I'm acting like I'm still board president, so this is this is so strange. Is anybody else interested in being the clerk? That sounded like a horse up here. All right, so I hear a motion. I think, Chuck, you'd be a great clerk. You guys would be a great team. So there's a motion and a second. Student trustees, all those in favor of Chuck Ford as our next clerk, please say aye. Aye. Adults, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Congratulations. Okay, now we switch.
So we'll take a moment to move around.
Now we got to move around.
So as the board shuffles, I will talk briefly about the trustee committee assignments. That does not have to be decided. Are we good? We're making the right there?
We'll let Mary do whatever she wants to do for the next meeting.
I'm sorry.
I'll miss you, Michael.
Oh, that's funny.
So as we get into the committee assignments, this is also the time of year when we...
I'll remember all the little people.
Your Highness, we're just about ready to start. Yes, over here.
Not going to be as funny as him. Oh. Okay, wait, who's who? No. Okay, wait, Chuck.
Barbara, can you open up the committee assignments? Or Mary, please? F.
Hello.
Yeah. So we have the committee assignments here for 2018. I think what we've done last year, and it's up to you. These are again one-year commitments. Have your discussion here tonight, and then we'll make these changes, and then these people will be the representatives going forward. The other thing I've seen sometimes is they defer this to the president to reach out individually. But I think here the board talked about this publicly last year, but I'll leave that up to you. We removed wellness in the past. There used to be a wellness representative. That group doesn't meet at a formal level as a standing group anymore. They do meet, but certainly the board is welcome. The one that's replaced that now is the LCAP Fiscal Advisory, which is a formal standing structure that meets roughly a few weeks prior to each of the major reporting periods. And we have broad representation from that with teachers, students, parents, and our municipalities. So this past cycle when we started, former President Anderson, Trustee Anderson was a part of that, and you see the rest up there. So I'll leave that up to President Lengren now to decide how you want to fill these for 2018.
Well, this will be easy with the first one since I was the liaison for the Golden Bell. Given my new role as president, I'm happy to offer that position to one of the other board members. I know, Laura, you enjoyed having this position, so just open it up to discussion of who might be interested.
Is this going to be an arm wrestle? Does anybody else want this? I'll take it if nobody else wants it. I love working with the Golden Bell team. Lars, you're on it. You're the head. Yeah. Despite the fact that Lars is the chair. No. I'm kidding.
He's going to have Violet come with him.
Okay, I'll
right.
take it.
We will note Trustee Anderson for Golden Bell. We'll move along. JLAC.
JLAC, Chuck, would you like to keep this position? No, that was the student trustee liaison. I take it back. Do you still want to keep the JLAC position?
I'll keep it, but Barbara goes anyway. Do you want to and I'll be the alternate.
Why don't we flip it?
Yeah,
That's
we'll
fair,
flip it.
'cause you're doing Nicholas in the book, yeah.
It's tomorrow, if anyone
Yeah,
else
we're
wants.
happy to flip it. This group typically meets on the days after the board meetings. I mean, just, so it's the day after board meetings, around 8:30.
8:30 at the MCOE.
Yeah. 7:30 is the E squared. Yeah. So, yeah, that's fine. So we'll flip that for JLAC. Trustee Owens is the primary and Chuck is the alternate. Because we're both welcome to come. MCSBA is the rep for the, go ahead.
But here's
Go ahead.
I don't know that I'm going to be elected to this position.
Okay.
So that's kind of up in the air, I think.
For MCSBA?
Does it,
I think the district has its own rep that they represent. Are you maybe thinking of?
I think I'm confusing it with the delegate assembly.
Right, the delegate is elected, yeah.
Executive board for this, but representationally, I'm happy to continue.
Okay.
with it.
President Lundgren, I'll leave it up to you. So we're looking at MCSBA rep. Trustee Owen says she's happy to continue in that role. They're involved, I know, in the trustee annual dinner event, and you must have some other meetings you attend as well? I don't know.
Because my position is delegate, I'm also on the executive board, so
Yeah.
we do
Other meetings.
organize these events and also push a bit on the JLAC group as well.
Okay.
It seems to make sense to me. Anyone else have any comment?
Okay.
Sounds good.
We will keep Trustee Owens for MCSBA. Student Trustee Liaison, we currently have had Chuck, Trustee Ford in this role for the past couple years, and then Trustee Owens as the alternate, so I'll leave that up to you guys, how you want to.
We agreed to run that from September to September.
Okay. And then at that point, did we decide?
Next September, we'll get a new one,
Okay.
because I won't be on the board all year next year.
Okay. So do you want to discuss it at that point or
Yeah,
decide
at
here
that
tonight?
point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, we could do it in November or October. Oh, no, you were thinking in terms of with the new students coming on board. I see what you're
So
saying.
sometime in the summer,
Yeah, I understand
maybe?
now.
When
Yes,
the new board gets.
I understand. When the new student
Thank you.
trustees.
Okay, so Mayor, make a note. We will bring this one back before the new students come on board. The last one is LCAP Fiscal Advisory. This group has only met once thus far. We do have a few other meetings. I think I meet 3 or 4 times a year. So in fairness to Trustee Anderson, she's only been on it once thus far. So I'll leave it up to President Lundgren to decide if you want Trustee Anderson to continue for the cycle or select someone new.
You get to boss me around out.
I know, it just occurred to me. No, do you want to still have this role, or does anyone else on the board like to discuss their interest, or?
So what is this for?
So the spirit of this group is to share with these stakeholders information related to the budget and LCAP about a week to 2 weeks before we share it with the board in an attempt to stimulate conversations, ask questions ahead of sort of to the board, so we know what to prepare for, what the public may wonder about as it relates to the budget. So it's sort of a sounding board for this. It's advisory, so that's why it says up there advisory to this. It was modeled loosely on what Larkspur does with their district, where they do something with their stakeholders, and Mill Valley has one. Mill Valley is a little bit more formal. They have something called a FAC, Fiscal Advisory Committee. But it's an attempt to, as we talked about, improve communication, outreach, and stakeholder input. And so, again, we have labor groups on there, our unions, parents, students, municipalities, trustees involved. And then so we meet in the evenings, 4 to 7-ish, I want to say, something in that time frame, about a week to 2 weeks prior to the major reporting period. So before the budget, before first interim, before second interim. So the next meeting will be in February. That's slated. So
It's not hard. It's two hours at night. So, I mean, if you want it, it's a good one. A lot of people. Yeah, it's not a big time commitment, and it's important to have a trustee there.
I'd be happy to do it, but I don't want to take it away from you if you're.
I'm okay. I can share.
There you go.
Is there any reason why we couldn't have two trustees there? Like, we did that with the budget committee, I recall, and it was actually helpful.
Maybe we could put Michael as the alternate, then he could show up.
And you could
as
still
well.
both go. Yeah. I think it's helpful when you have two trustees doing something, so.
So we'll put Laura and then Michael's alternate, just so.
Or other way around, however you
Or
want
the
to
other
do
way
Want
it.
to be the lead?
Why don't we be co?
Wow, that's a lot of pressure.
Can we do that? Can we, right? Unless you think 2 is too many.
We're okay with it.
Yeah, let's do that. I think it worked really well with that budget.
I was trying
committee
to
that we
help
did.
you with the alternate.
Yeah.
The co is a higher
I think in light of the fact that we're looking at revenue.
higher level.
Right. No, I think it makes sense.
This is probably important.
We'll talk stores with you all evening, Mr. Fetterman.
Thank you.
OPEB, yes, it's all OPEB. All right, we'll make note of that.
Very
All right.
good.
Could I get the dates of when these are scheduled so that I can get them on my calendar, please?
We'll get those to you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, I think that's G now, so thank you.
So G, overview of next generation history and social science framework. I think that must be you, Tara, since you're the only one here.
Aaron Pribble's here too.
Oh, okay. Now I know why Aaron is here. Great. I haven't finished reading the article yet in the Marin. That's, congratulations. That's wonderful.
Oh, sure, yeah, thanks. Okay. So Erin and I are here to present about the next generation history and social science framework that is following in the science path. But just a little bit of background on what this is. So tonight we'll talk about what it is, what it entails for us, and give you a little bit of background information on the task force and the work that the task force is doing and who's on it. But so this was the sort of purpose behind the framework. It was adopted by the State Board of Education in 2016. What's new about it is interesting in that, unlike science, the standards have not changed. There's no change to there's no suggested change to how we sequence our courses or organize our courses. It's really about how we teach and a deeper emphasis on specifically what they call historical thinking skills. So the framework itself is not a very usable document right now in its current iteration. It's a very long narrative. It's 24 chapters of just narrative. It's very long. But when you dig through it, what you get out of it is this idea of really shifting how we teach and emphasizing certain groups, historical groups that have not been part of the conversation before. As it says here, inclusion of historically marginalized groups, not just in a month. You know, the idea that you really need to understand whose voice has been heard throughout history and whose is not, and how that shapes our understanding of the past and our understanding of the present and potentially the future. So there's a very, very big emphasis on marginalized groups, and we'll show you an example of what that could look like. And along with that, this understanding of multiple points of view throughout history. Aaron's just going to chime in whenever he wants. I did love this cartoon. How much more history is there? Good one. Right. So as I said, it's a shift in how we teach rather than what we teach. And in saying that, we already teach these skills that we're going to highlight in a minute, but really the work that the task force is going to do is look at how do we systematize that? How do we ensure that all kids become proficient in all of these skills? And how can we use content as the vehicle to teach these skills? And how do we really look at an inquiry base to history? How can we look at it as an examination or an inquiry into events and people? Right now, there's no standardized test for the history, social science portion exclusively. The standards are woven in with the Common Core English standards. So in the SBAC test that our students take in 11th grade, a lot of the some of the readings that they do are actually history-based text. So that's sort of how those pieces are woven in. Which I like, the idea that literacy works across the curriculum. It's not just literacy in English. So, and as far as we know, there won't be, right, a standalone assessment for social studies. So this is sort of the framers of the framework. When they look at it, this is sort of some of the things that they summarize, sort of how they see what's going on in the classroom and the application of this framework. And that is that instead of spending time learning sort of historical facts in a classroom, a student would learn how to apply that knowledge that they've learned. So how can I take what I've learned about this event or these group of people or this context and apply it to a circumstance? Students are asked to sort of examine documents and things and construct their own interpretation. What might this mean? And as you can see, think like a historian, right? This idea that, I'm going to go on a limb here and say for a long time people had a perception of history class as a sit and get, right? They used to, had all sorts of horrible names for it, dates and dead people. But, and this idea that it was just a sit and get, and it was just a memorization of facts, when in fact it is really, it's a human story. And there is no one human story. This idea that how we come to an understanding of what may have actually happened and what circumstances led to it and the different points of view, and how no two people have the exact same interpretation of an event, and that it's important to examine multiple perspectives to really get as true an understanding as we can of an event. Come on up here, Brib. Okay, so the focus, the historical thinking skills that we mentioned earlier, these are known as the Big Six. And these are the specific historical and social science thinking skills that we are focusing on in the task force. And again, none of these are new, but sort of how we unpack them and how we might ask kids to look at documentation, look at events, interpret things through these lenses. So here is an example of what a potential lesson could look like when looking through the historical thinking skill cause and consequence as sort of your anchor. And as you can see at the bottom here, there's the teaching thesis, as they call it. So this is sort of really, this is what the teacher wants the students, the understanding the students want them to come to. And so here's how you could set this up. So the focus question, how did the Cold War domestic agenda impact the rights of American citizens? It's a pretty broad question and could be answered in multiple fashions using multiple groups. But specifically for this unit, they were going to use the impact the rights of women, leftists, and gay men and women. So those are the groups. That's the idea of how you're going to weave in some historically marginalized groups into the mainstream, so to speak, history. That, history didn't happen to them in certain pockets, right? They were part of the story all along. And so then here are some focusing questions for the students. And then you can see where, the cause and consequence comes in. And what I like about the way they've organized, well, this is just one example, but, for many of us, I know Erin and I taught world history together for years, many of us have had these course level and semester level driving questions for a long time, and I really like that, this idea that we are really looking to explore a topic, and this one is, what does it mean to be American in modern times? And what has shaped that? Like, what has shaped modern times, and what has shaped the identity of being an American, right? And who has been and has not been included in that process. Yeah.
So Tara,
Yeah.
Can you go back that slide?
Sure.
This is in the state standards, or is this something that our group?
No,
together?
this was something that, actually Erin can probably speak to. This was a UC Berkeley professor that our social studies department was working with, put together as an example of how to employ the historical thinking skills while bringing in historically marginalized groups into a unit that we already do, using driving questions that we already have.
So for a teacher, this could be something that we have at the outset of a unit that frames our thinking about a particular unit. 1 page, 30,000 foot view. What are we trying to accomplish here? So this could be a student document, I suppose, but it's really helpful for teachers to have this at the outset of a unit of study.
But this is in a TAM district. This is not, if I'm in another district somewhere in the state and I'm looking at social studies, these new next generation standards, this isn't something that I would necessarily see.
Not necessarily. This was something that, again, the UC professor that was working with the TAM district teachers presented as an example.
And is this kind of lesson being taught now?
Yes. Yeah. So these, like, you know, that focus question is a question that many of our teachers already use as a you know, a driving question or essential question for the U.S. history course. And to some degree, you know, it's a matter of degrees as to who may include, you know, leftists, you know, women, or gay men and women. It's just depending. But the idea here is this was how you could teach that exact same topic that you're already teaching and include all 3 of these groups.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at, I'm not being very clear, I apologize, is this is something that we're teaching now, that we're teaching now. So how is this going to differ, if at all, when we adopt the next generation social studies standards? Or is this just an indication that, in fact,
Sorry.
it's just going to be continuity?
Right. Well, yes, continuity. So the idea is that this driving question we're teaching and, you know, Cold War domestic policies we're teaching, but we may not be specifically focusing on historically marginalized groups to teach the content. So this is an example of how we could. So while we're teaching this topic, we may not be teaching it this way, using these groups as examples of people who lost rights during this time period. Does that make sense?
No. I'm just trying to figure out
What's new?
So what would change would be using these specific groups.
Yeah.
That would be the change. That we would be using these specific groups and that content to teach these concepts in this unit.
So the green bubbles are different.
Yeah, right, the green bubbles. So like the who is impacted is different. Instead of just broadly talking about American citizens and talking more broadly about anti-communist, you know, because this piece has been, you know, largely where people focused.
Yes.
Right? But then the idea is like, and there were other groups that were impacted as well. And so here's a way where you could include different groups while teaching the same concept.
We're in a puzzler over here.
So that's not being done now?
Not necessarily, not to this degree.
Okay.
This is being done.
Yes.
Right.
And we just figured out between the 2 of us which one was green. You have to remember that. We're both colorblind. We were having
These
quite a debate over
boxes
here.
here.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
It
Yeah.
may be premature, but you know I'm going to ask it. It looks as though, certainly the writing embedded in this work, do you think that the teachers are practically going to be doing more writing as a result?
I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
I think there's this pendulum swing
Yeah.
between skills and content, and if we are over on one side for a variety of reasons, I think we're shifting back towards the middle, more towards skills, though I think that's certainly a necessary implication of this, is an emphasis on those skills, and some of those skills are writing for sure.
Do you think there's potential here for our returning to the use of a general assessment that I know was done at Redwood, where it wasn't an assessment, I take it back. It was a social studies English presentation on how to write argument. And then we followed up, though, with the direct write, I think, in some ways, that became a kind of assessment. Is there any hope that with this direction, we can reinstate some of those, dual disciplinary assessments?
Yeah, I think one of the things that the task force has sort of on our array of things to do is to look at this idea of I don't know if we call them cornerstone assessments or benchmark assessments, because the idea that we're going to be teaching specifically these 6 skills across 4 years, and we'll talk a little bit about the work that the task force is actually doing, that one of the things we're going to have to be able to do is assess students' progress on those skills. So it would make sense, and I know that as a TLC, the TAM Leadership Collaborative has also been talking this year, and we started last year, around cornerstone or benchmark assessments, because right now we don't have anything internal other than sort of GPAs to measure how students are doing. We have SBAC, but that's just in the 11th grade, and we don't get that until kids are seniors. So this is just a little deeper dive into one of the historical skills, so continuity and change. So you have this idea of guideposts. And so those are sort of like, what are we looking for when we're looking for someone to address continuity and change? What makes for continuity, what makes for change in a historical sense? And so each of the historical thinking skills has these guideposts that are sort of just a little more detailed in what it would mean. Here's just another example. Here's historical significance guideposts.
So like the who cares, the so what
Right.
question in history really matters. History can be really boring if it's just this happened and that happened and that happened, but tying it to some larger meaning, what's the significance, is really important to teaching history and to learning history. And this names that specifically. What was historically significant about this person, this place, this event? So that's one of the shifts.
May I also add that the language here in setting up the guideposts is also fundamental to a lot of our AP classes in terms of history and literature. Same kind of thing. So if we're doing it in 9th grade, then we really are providing a much stronger foundation for our kids to be able to access AP classes just in these guideposts alone.
Yeah, and thank you. I also, one of the things, AP kind of took a leap out ahead, and both AP, well, I know AP US and AP European have shifted. The content and the tests has shifted in the last 3 years, and they are much more aligned now to these big 6 thinking skills. They kind of always were, but they're much more aligned now. So it's going to provide continuity. And the other thing I like about this is this idea that it really does set up history as an examination and an inquiry, right? Because this idea of, who is historically significant and why. And I think to part of our equity work, who has been considered historically significant and who has not, and why, and where have we seen those voices and where have we seen those voices excluded? And I think that's sort of an exciting approach to looking at history and historical events and current events.
Yeah, I was going to ask about, have you considered adding a level to this that really focuses on tying history into current events and looking at how history affects what's going on now?
Yes, I think, so one of the things, and Erin might want to speak to this more, but, the ethical dimension is really interesting because it's about taking our current sensibilities and what we know today and not using that lens to examine, not comparing people from, 1840 to our standards today, right? They're 2 different time periods. but I think it also lends itself to the flip. Like, what would someone from 1840, right, think of 2017, right? And so that idea, and a lot of the ideas of, that we used to talk about a lot in history is talking about, what does that mean today? Like, if we were looking at this historical event, what would be a comparable today? Or if these people were alive today, like, where would they be affiliated? Like, where are their beliefs aligned today? And what can that tell us, and how can that inform us as we look forward and make decisions?
Yeah, and then also about looking at patterns in history and sort of the types of events that have occurred, and looking at how if those patterns are sort of repeating themselves in modern day.
Yep.
Is there like a way to add?
Yeah, those
something
are,
like
and
that?
particularly in continuity and change, that's where you get into a lot of patterns, both continuity and change and cause and consequence. And you get into things of patterns and what creates continuity and what are impetuses for change, right? And so that speaks to what are the conditions that cause an event, right? We know that when you have a deteriorating middle class, it often leads to revolution of some kind, right? So there's certain like big guideposts or markers in history that we know inform. So thank you. He's got a historian in the making over here. So what are we doing to prepare for this shift? We like task force in this district. So we have a new one, or not so new now. We started meeting last spring. And so here's the makeup of our task force. This was, we put it out to all social studies teachers who wanted to join. We wanted to make sure that we had representation across the entire district, which we got. And so we're meeting about every 6 weeks. And what we're doing right now is we're really unpacking the framework and what it means for us. And to be a little more specific, we're creating sort of detailed rubrics or learning progressions for each of the 6 HTS is historical thinking skill. So we are really unpacking those in 2 bands, 9, 10, 11, 12, and looking at what it would mean for a student to be proficient. So the rubrics go from we're using UBD language, so acquiring, making meaning, and being able to transfer or apply. And then we're looking at that at 9, 10, 11, 12, and we're also developing sort of examples of tasks you could ask students that would get at those in each of those. That was a lot of those. It's hard to explain this without seeing it, but we're not ready to show it publicly. We're also exploring resources and professional development opportunities for our social studies department members.
So like another way to say it would be that you should see the binder. A couple of us printed it out, and it is probably 3 or 4
Really?
inches thick. It looked like 20 people wrote it on a Google Doc, and so in many different voices. It's really unruly. So we're trying to digest it, and rather than taking it to all the department members across the district and saying, read this thing, make sense of it, we're trying to make sense of it. We're trying to digest it and say, here are the Cliff Notes, here's what you need to know. Read the document if you want to, but you probably don't want to, so here are the most important changes.
Yeah, we're hoping that we can hand them sort of 6 one-pagers, each for one of the thinking skills that says, here's what it means for a kid to be proficient in each one of these skills at each of these levels, and here's some sample tasks you could provide, you could give the kid to get at that understanding as sort of a starting point. And it actually took us a while to even be like, it was kind of like playing Twister a little bit, sort of like, I don't know, how do we, but right now, we feel good about the direction we're going in. So it's fun. It's fun work, if unruly.
Do you see that the detailed rubrics may improve issues around rigor? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they provide a pretty standard set of what it means to be proficient, and what a student would be expected to be able to demonstrate, to do at each of those, in each of those skills. And I think we had a sort of long conversation around, is it 9, 10, 11, 12? Is it just 9, 12? And we really did think, we wanted to be able to demonstrate that, there's depth to these skills. And so this idea that it's really it's a movement this way, but it's a movement this way from your acquiring knowledge in 9, 10 to your being able to transfer it in 11, 12 in the same skill. So this idea that it's not more, but it's a deeper understanding of and demonstration of understanding of that skill.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any other questions?
Can I say two last things on it?
Absolutely.
One, if you guys are interested in going into this further in your spare time, like the 3 academics who are in the vanguard of this stuff. Peter Satius is a professor from Canada who wrote the Big Six Historical Thinking Skills. That's where a lot of that stuff comes from. Sam Weinberg of the Stanford History Education Group. SHAG is doing a lot of this stuff. A lot of our teachers use that as well. There's UC Berkeley History Social Science Project, and also Eric Foner is a professor emeritus at Columbia University in history who writes all kinds of great curriculum. So if you're interested, those are 3 great people to look at. And then finally, like what is exciting about this as a teacher, it's a heavy burden to be literate, to evaluate sources. And so I just think if you look at like the election that happened tonight or anything like that, if you look at how information is spread, how people consume media, being able to differentiate between primary and secondary sources and understand that every source has a bias and unpack that for what it is, that's a really valuable historical thinking tool just for the development of citizens. So that's like it's a burden. It's a heavy burden for history teachers, but also fires us up to do what we can do.
I have to say, I love these Big Six historical thinking skills. I think they're I think it's just fabulous. And, our textbooks and our, of the past and our standardized tests of the past have really mitigated against being able to teach this way. And I wish I was still teaching it, I find this really, really, from a teacher's perspective, really, really exciting. And speaking of historical significance, perhaps, you may have heard the pinging coming out of my computer. So those were a couple of notifications. The man who put the bombers of the church in Birmingham, Alabama, has been elected to the United States Senate.
He has been. Oh, no, Doug right. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Yeah.
I think Moore was
He put them in
elected.
jail.
What?
He put them in jail.
The man who put them in jail
Yeah.
has been elected to the Senate.
Moore was defeated.
Moore was defeated.
Moore was
Right, I think he missed jail.
Moore was defeated.
The alleged.
Yes.
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
historically, the
Yes.
fact that someone could put Klansmen in jail in Alabama and then be elected to the Senate is
Yeah, and if you look at
significant.
the election map, it's pretty interesting because Birmingham has it's about this big and it's solid blue on the election map. So Birmingham came out in force today.
Wow.
Any other questions?
I just want to make a comment
Historical
on
significance, right there.
this. I really like what you're doing with the standards, and I know they came down from the state, but I'm looking at this bullet point, inclusion of historically marginalized groups woven throughout, not in a given month. I have a friend who's a human rights expert, and she was asking about what we do in the district to talk about human rights, and it's so important that we are talking about all humans' rights all the time, and everything is interwoven. I love that the English department and the social studies department, history, everyone's talking together about things that really matter. So kudos. I do not want to see a 3-foot binder, but I'm excited to see the 1-page summaries.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Erin, for being here.
Item I.
Thanks for coming, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Eddie.
Good evening. We're going to have a test on a first interim.
Oh, did you want to also, Barbara? Can we wait one moment? We have two board members that would like to take a bio break.
Sure.
And it is 8:20, and I think we originally allowed 40 minutes for this presentation. Is that correct? I want to say it was from 8:10. And we try and finish by 9.
Okay.
So this is a very important presentation, so I don't want you to rush. But Dr. Yoshihara, do you have any recommendations of anything that we could postpone? I know that, Lars, you have something that we probably need to approve, but...
Really quickly, both of those. Literally, Bill, depending on more questions, I can probably do them literally in a couple of minutes.
Okay. Is that, would that work? Okay.
Tara, all yours can wait for the 4 policies. You didn't have, yeah, we're happy to move the 4 policies.
Okay. Okay, Daniel, you're up. Yeah, I think we're ready. And Chuck and Barbara, we decided, I can't remember if we talked about this before you left or not, but we're not going to do the board policies so that we can still try and finish by 9, except we're going to get through with this one and then the next 2 following with which are Lars's.
Well, good evening. I have just
Can
few.
you hold on one moment? Michael, do you mind if we start? Okay, just making sure. Okay, good.
Before I get started, I would like for, I had put some documents on your desk,
Mhm.
and I just want to go through them very briefly because there have been some questions and there's some corrections. Okay, so the correction is, first of all, I apologize. The original document did not have page numbers on them. And we've already inserted a page number, so we can refer to them easily. So the document before you, there was a question on page 5. I just want to point that out. Page 5 of that document. In this version, let's start from the beginning. Okay.
If you're referring to my questions, I did note one on 5 of the PDF, and I said that just because there weren't page numbers. So I don't know if
Well,
you're
no,
referring to mine or Michael's. I know I had a question on this page too, but,
Yeah, there's a correction.
Okay.
Can you scroll up a little bit? I think the next page. Let's just start from the top. Start from the beginning. Just scroll up. Yeah, scroll all the way up so that way we can follow it. And I really apologize. Okay,
That's
so
okay.
just scroll down, and I'll tell you where to stop. Keep going. So that's page 1. Next one. Next one. The next one. And the next one. The next. Yeah, this page right here. So there was it says district is anticipated, that has been scratched out, that has been fixed.
okay.
So it says district anticipates having monthly cash balance. Okay. So then I want to make a quick comment on the chart. Can you scroll down to this chart right here? Yeah. All right. There was some clarification issues. May I address that right here?
Whatever works easiest for you with I know I sent you some questions, and if you see them as you go through, feel free to point them out, and I will anything important. Otherwise, I can follow up. I don't want to hold others up if it's not, because some of them weren't huge questions.
Well, there have been a couple of questions on this
Right.
as well. I just want to address the public. It's not just you, but
Okay,
a couple
great,
of questions on
great.
this. So for this chart, for clarification purpose, this is the fund balance and how we earmarks the component of the fund balance. And for this chart, the combined general fund balance at first entering is 17.2 million. That's what you're looking at right here. This is combined, both restricted and unrestricted. So that's the top fund balance. So what happened is we have the board has a policy or a preference of earmarking 17% of our expenditures to be our reserve. This is it right here. So we calculate this all from the total expenditures. So we take 17% of total expenditures. That's what this $15 million constitute. We do that at year-end closing, budget adoption, That's our wish list. That's what we would like to have, that money. Okay. But what happened is we have all these other assignments to deal with. We have the deficits, we have our education program. When you add it up, we have 13.7 million that we will also like to keep for rainy day. Then we have the non-spendable, which is like the, and then we have the restricted balance. These are categorical dollars. So what we do is you add all of these up, and that's what we would like to see in the fund balance. Well, when we did, it came to the total came to 29 million. If you add all of these plus our wish list, the total is 29 million. We only have 17 million. So that's what created. That's what that is. So any questions or any comment on that?
I think the question that I had, it took a while to figure, I see what you're saying, and I appreciate that. But in terms of, trying to glance through these, and probably the public, I think it'd also be helpful just to say at point blank somehow, here's what your balance is, and then also, when we're referring to something at a percentage, it would be helpful to see what that percentage is rather than flipping back. Just more of just the way the format is, so we can really see, because later it looked like our fund balance, and maybe you'll get to that, was that we're actually closer to 3% this year.
I'll get to that.
Yeah, okay.
So what happened is we do have, this is what the board desired, but we have our statutory
The statutory, is
reserve,
that
which is
somewhere else up here?
Yeah, it's 3%.
And so where's the 3%?
It's buried in here. Instead of 3%, which is 17%.
Right, but it seems like, I'm going to let you keep going.
Okay.
We got,
So then there's a correction on page, the page before you. If you go all the way to page 40, it's way towards the end of that. It's Appendix F, page 40 of 179. Okay. In the original document, the word adoption, public hearing, provide, that was cut off. So I went ahead and fixed that. So those are the two things that I wanted to point out.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So then we will go to the PowerPoint. If you can bring up the PowerPoint for me. Thank you. So these are the agenda for the night. I'll talk a little bit about the fiscal reporting calendar. And again, you can interrupt me if you have questions. I'll be happy to slow down and answer your question. And the key assumption, the component of the funding factors, and I will talk a little bit about the combined general fund, and we'll talk about the reconciliation. And then there's a chart in here, a schedule in here that talks about the contribution to our restricted program. And then I will talk a little bit about the general fund activities, component of total general fund, and then other supplemental information, primarily STIRS, PERS, and things of that nature. And then we'll have time for questions and answers. So here are the major fiscal reporting calendar. We're here in December 15. The audit report just got presented, and then March 19th, we're gonna have the second interim. And then starting March, April, May, we're gonna start our budget development process. I just wanted to point out that this year, this is my first year here. I started in March 20th. So I was up and running. There was a transition, a very quick transition. So I didn't get the chance to actually drill down the budget development where I would like to visit the site, do a one-on-one meeting, and then just start from the ground up. So I'm going to do some catch-up. So hopefully I'm planning on starting early March, maybe late April, early March to get, late February, early March to get a start on developing the 18-19 budget. Okay. So here are some of the key assumptions for the budget. What I tried to do was to compare the adopted budget with the first interim. Basically, the first interim is technically a quarterly report. We do the budget adoption, and then couple of months later, we do a rebenching. We look at what was adopted and where we are right now. We're going to do this again in March. The reason is because these numbers, these variances changes as we go on. For example, property tax, when we developed the budget, we had it was based on an estimate we got from the county treasurer. Few months later, as you can see, they rebenched the numbers. So that's almost $210,000 drop in property tax revenue. Now we don't calculate these numbers. We get these numbers from the county treasurer's office. And parcel tax remain the same because that we can pretty much calculate it. We know how many parcels we have as an estimate, and we know what the rates are. So these are fairly easy to estimate. This one is also fairly easy to estimate. Any questions so far? Okay. Okay. And so we have, unfortunately, every major revenue source from budget adoption, we had a little drop in that. So that's one of the phenomena with the first interim. Okay. And then here we have the components of the funding factor. We have our state aid. This number is based on the 2012-13 categorical that got rolled over into LCFF calculation. It stays the same. This number changed a little bit based on enrollment, the ADA. And this is a property tax. We get this from the county treasurer office. And so we add them up, and then we come up with a general purpose fund. And then we do a transfer into deferred maintenance to keep up the school building, to keep up our campus. Okay. And here is the projection for our property taxes. Again, this is based on what the county office gives. Now, there was a question, there was a comment on this right here. The homeowner exemption, technically speaking, this is money that this technically should be negative. But what happened with this is, excuse me. This was a couple of years ago. This was an assembly bill that was passed that the state did some backfilling to school district to local education entity to backfill some of the exemption. So so that's what this is. Okay. Now, it's a complex calculation that goes into this. I don't know how that is calculated, but that's what you're looking at.
So it comes from the state?
Yes, it's like a backfill. They gave it to local agency, like the county. They gave it to local how to call it?
Is it based on how many exemptions we have?
It is based on, some sort of a county-wide exemption, and then they recalculated and gave it back to the county, and then the county passed it on to school district. Yeah. And with this chart, this table, excuse me, we're taking where we were at budget adoption, and this is what has changed, and this is where we are right now with the deficit. And it's a combination of this right here, reduction in revenue, increase in expenditure, an increase in our special ed contribution. This right here is of a major concern. I have talked to the county office, and one of the issue that affect this has to do with the excess cost pool. What they told us was at first interim, they gave us the worst case scenario of a special ed expenditures, the cost pool in the county. The issue here is that overall the special ed cost, the cost pool in this county is going up. So when they do the calculation, the rate goes up from budget adoption to the first interim. So what happened is we're hoping that this will go. She told me, the county that is, they told me that this rate will go down by year-end closing. But they gave us the worst case scenario, and I had the budget, so I had to budget it. Okay. And this table has to do with all of the transfer out to our various programs. And so here is a chart that illustrates the total combined general fund revenue, both restricted and unrestricted. And you can stop me or slow me down if you have questions. I'll be happy to answer those. And here's unrestricted. And this is the expenditures. As you can see, 78% of the total expenditures goes to cover employee salaries and benefits. So that's what this chart is telling us. And then here's unrestricted expenditures. Now, there was a question or a comment about the indirect cost. Basically, the indirect cost is a reduction to our expenditures. This is the overhead cost that we charge to other restricted programs to pay for superintendent salary, fiscal service people, district office, and so forth. So that's money that we charge to Title I, Title II, the restricted program, and we bring this money back into the general fund in terms of a negative expenditure. So it's like an offset. And then this, excuse me?
No, I get it. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So this table, basically this goes back to how we earmark our fund balance, and to be blunt with, this is a fund balance. And so we take the fund balance and we just map out, we earmark these dollar amount, that's what it is. So this is actually what our fund balance is in a nutshell. And it's the same thing here. This is our fund balance, total combined general fund balance. That's what it is. So we take this dollar and we earmark all of these amounts. This right here, this is the statutory 3% reserve that I was talking about. So this is 3% of total expenditures. That's what the state requires. So what this chart is telling us is we met all of our financial obligation as far as the statutory state is concerned. We're able to fund two deficit year, and then we're able to put some money aside to cover our education program. That's what this is saying. Our wish list is saying that we want to put more money here. Unfortunately, we don't have enough funds to cover that 17%. That's what this chart is saying. In the perfect world, this should be $15 million. That would be the 17% reserve. Okay. And this chart, excuse me, it just gave some historical trend of what we spent on people. This is the first chart is combined, but when you look at the unrestricted general fund, most of that goes to pay for people. And then these are some supplementary charts that I put in the first interim report because I've had some questions. There's been a couple of questions on what we're spending on, health and welfare. So what I did was I did went back a couple of years just to get a good feel of what the district has been spending. And as you can see, this is a trend, an average of about 6%. So this is historical. And being new to the district, I really want to get a good feel of how much we're spending on health and welfare. And this is average. This is, I believe this is statewide average. It's about 6%, 6 to 7%. And here is a PERS cost. And with the PERS, we don't set the rate. CARPERS set the rate, and that's the rate we use to develop the budget and to calculate PERS. This right here is the percentage change. As you can see, it's all over the place. These are the percentage change from year to year. Any question? Okay.
Yeah, Daniel, can I stop you with these charts? I find these charts to be really misleading.
Okay.
And the reason is because they're only, right, you're charting the fact, maybe this is just me the way I'm looking at it, right? But when I look at that, for the color challenged among us, that purple line, it looks like our costs are somehow going down in one of these years, but it's obviously not the case. And right, this is just a question of the percentage of increase each
right,
year.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, when I do the math here from the years 2011 to 2012, I mean, just to put it in perspective, right? But if you do the math, it looks like we have in excess of a 33% increase in the last 5 years, right, in our health and welfare costs. And
that would seem pretty fair because what I should have put in here is the dollar change. That would have.
Well, you can figure out the dollar change. Right?
Yeah, it's right there,
not,
yeah.
But the
Yeah.
point of it is that I think when we're presenting this, I think as a visual,
Mm-hmm.
this is just me. I think as a visual, it really doesn't capture the significance of the fact that our health and welfare costs as a district have gone up over a third in the last 6 years.
Okay.
Or 5 years, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the projections are going forward, how reasonable this is. But I just think the fact that we're just measuring, you're kind of disaggregating year by year
Mm-hmm.
increases doesn't, it helped me to look at this and say, what does that really mean in terms of what our total costs are? And they're substantial in terms of these increases.
Okay. So you're looking at like from here to here?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the brown lines give an honest representation, but the blue line is misleading.
Yeah, it's talking about the percentage change. Yeah, okay.
And
I'll
you're
take that
just-
into consideration next time. Yeah,
Take the blue line out.
yeah, okay.
And the same thing, well, I mean, maybe if you have some kind of text on the bottom that explains it, right, the other thing, this is, right, because if you showed just increase in cost, right, it wouldn't be looking, it wouldn't be looking as if we're doing better in 1 year.
It would look like this. It would be a sturdy climb, like an
Right.
incline like
I
that.
think more,
Well, I think if you do a cumulative,
Yeah.
and I agree, I think the way the program does that bluish line,
Yeah.
it is misleading unless you really study it. But adding
I'll
a
make-
cumulative to the same graph so you could
Right.
see that it's,
and we have the same issue shows
yeah.
up in the PERS and the
Yeah.
SERS, right? This is
Yeah.
the very same.
Yeah. So,
Correct.
so what I will do is a second interim, I'm gonna remove this one and use accumulative cost. And then you're gonna see like a sturdy incline like that. I agree.
I mean, I think it's useful to know what is the annual, increase,
Mhm.
if you
Sure.
will. And especially here, right, it's not like, when we looked at property tax revenue in the past, there were a few years where it actually,
Yeah.
went down, right, when we were having difficulties and so forth, and that was instructional,
Yeah.
because we know that if there's a real economic downturn, that can happen. But it ain't gonna happen with health and welfare costs.
Let's keep going up. And I think it's the same thing here.
Right.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
So this equates, just so everybody knows, in the last 5 years, this equates to an increase of 34.63%
Yeah.
in our PERS costs.
Yes, yes. Same here. This is just, this is STIRS. I think the same concept goes here too.
Yeah, since I didn't know what excludes on behalf of means, I did the next chart.
Okay. Well, on
Oh, that's
behalf
what I asked
of,
too.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had the same question. What does it mean?
What it means is, with STIRS, there's a portion that the state contribute. We have employer portion, we have the portion that staff put in, employee, employer, and there's a small portion that the state put in. The state said districts need to show that on the book for reporting purpose. So we have to show that on the expenditure side, and then they said, well, track it on the revenue side also, so it will be a wash on your book, so that it, it doesn't skew your revenue and your expenditures. So that's what it's called, on behalf of, what the state is paying on behalf of the district. That's what that is. So to show actual, I'm sorry.
Does that make sense?
So, well, there's this chart and the next chart.
Yeah.
And in terms of where, it's this chart that calculates the actual cost of the
Yes,
district?
yes.
Because it excludes the state contributions?
Yes. So this is what, so again, see how it's a steady climb right here. That is correct.
Right, okay.
This
Well,
is
I
actual
calculated-
cost.
I calculated on the other one.
Oh, really? Okay.
Being inclusive.
Yeah, this one includes, as you can see, look, this includes the on behalf of.
So in an attempt to increase transparency, the state wanted the districts to show total cost on the STIRS side to a district. So they wanted to include what the state contributes. So remember, state has employee plus employer plus state. So it is a pass-through. They ask you to recognize the revenue, but then you pass it through as an expenditure. And I asked to create this separately because you can see it's relatively new as well. This was imposed last year, and now it's going forward. So the spike happened when the state imposed it. So the slide before is more true if you want to compare to prior years. Because this includes the state pass-through, and it doesn't show sort of the district cost. And the slide before or after shows this one here
This
is
showed
more relative to the district because the state pass-through skews the percentages.
Right.
So
So we're up.
still a big number.
Yeah.
We're up well over 100%.
Yeah. And of course, this is just for informational only, reserve criteria. We fall in this category because our ADA is about 45 to 4,600. And this chart you've seen before, the basic aid versus the state-funded school district. And this concludes the presentation. So this is what's coming up. Mr. Christensen and is working with the negotiation team. The second bullet is of a concern to me. I think it's a concern to everybody. The district has a structural deficit, and I'm sure that the boards have been working towards this. And these are items that are not included in the interim. We have some staffing ratio that were put in place with the anticipated enrollment increase. And what happened was at first entering, our enrollment turned out to be lower than what we anticipated, but we didn't adjust the staffing increase. It has not been adjusted yet. So that's something that we have to work with Tara and Lars on working with them to come up with a number before we put that in. And I think there was a question about this. Mr. Superintendent, you want to address that one right there?
Yeah, I should clarify the first bullet. So the first sub-bullet about adjustments to staffing, this relates to the staffing plan that will come to the board in April for the subsequent year. We have projections that are sitting in the budget now based upon last year's sort of numbers moving forward. As you've heard Dr. Topi and Mr. Christensen share, within the collectively bargained amounts of the staffing closer to the ratio is really the spirit of this. And that there is room within our current ratios to staff tighter. So hypothetically, if we said we were going to need 12 teachers next year, I'm making this up, I don't know. If we say we're going to need 12 teachers in the budget, that's sitting in the budget as the cost for the next year and some number in the out year. We believe that number can be scaled downwards. It is not in there yet. When that does get scaled downward, that will reduce the expenditures, right? That's a cost, and therefore increase the ending fund balance. That will appear by second interim, and then predicated upon the staffing plan. So that's the first bullet.
So,
Go ahead.
So for clarification, if I'm reading it, so it's not a downward revision in enrollment projections?
Correct. That's why I wanted it. Yes. There is a slight revision in enrollment projections, but that's a smaller piece in sort of the bigger picture of why we're revising downwards. The second bullet with increased capital costs, we have yet to see what we're hoping this can be mitigated, but as the board is well aware, and as I've you'll see in the update, but when I met today with the College of Marin president, the costs for any construction related, even before the fires, was expensive. It is now extraordinary. So even College of Marin, that passed a huge bond, says that everything they've put out has come in way above estimates. And they said that was already before the fire. So because of this increase, and who knows with what's happening down south, how this will trickle through the state. Again, you'll hear more than you would like, I'm sure, from Mr. Christensen and David as we move forward with trying to get these portables in. Any kind of cost, if that involves CEQA, that involves anything else, could potentially increase what we've set aside. Now, we set aside the best we can at the time. We moved $3 million. You may have seen in some of the older presentations. I think in fairness, we have to look closely whether $3 million will be enough. And I think whatever's left, but there's some amount left in that. Those are the capital costs associated with the increased growth. So while we like to bring in 3 portables, what we estimated at 250 at the time may now be 500, pick the number. So it's hard to predict that with such volatility in the construction market.
It's not the leasing of the units themselves, it's the site preparation. That's where we're seeing the dramatic increase in cost.
So that's the second bullet. Was there a third?
Third one is.
Was okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, negotiated increase, sorry.
That's still in the works. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. And I will be open for discussion, questions, comments on the presentation.
You need me to talk about OPEB, or you're good?
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
You want me to talk about OPEB, or you good? OPEB?
OPEB. Other post-employment
Page
benefits,
10.
pension?
Page 10, there's a small section. You're good? We could talk later if you need. Okay.
Okay. So there was a question about NPS. That's the non-public school. That's
Thank
where
you.
we place
Yeah,
our
it was an
special ed
acronym.
students.
I didn't
Which one?
recognize. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I didn't know that acronym. Thank you.
All right, so I recommend that the board adopt the interim report as presented.
It's going the wrong
Do any board
way.
members have, pardon me?
I said it's going the wrong way.
Any other discussion or questions? Ms. Anderson, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would. I move that we approve the 2017-18 first interim budget report and positive certification.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Say aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can tell you put a lot of work into that.
Right. And I
Thank you.
appreciate the questions that are submitted ahead of time. That really helped.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Thank you.
So Lars, you're next. Item K, and it's 8:55.
I'm gonna go
And you know,
fast.
I cracked a joke to somebody that I was going to use those 3-minute things when you got up, and I was going to do this. I was looking forward to it, and I just might do it.
It's only been myself and the cameraman who haven't had a chance to thank Ms. Anderson
for her service the past year, so thank you. On behalf of both of us, we really appreciate the great
You're
work.
welcome.
Okay, on to business. Food service. Per the memorandum submitted to the board in the board packet, we have increased food sales at both Sir Francis Drake High School and Redwood High School by roughly 20% over the past year. And as such, we would like to add some hours to our food service positions. At Sir Francis Drake, we would like to add 4 hours to an existing 4-hour position, thereby creating an 8-hour position. And at Redwood High School, there is no part-time position available to add to, so we would like to establish a new 4-hour position. We respectfully request that the board approve these increases for a January start. And you have the accompanying financial impact material, a detailed chart to go along with the memorandum.
Would you like to ask a question, Mr. Futterman?
Thank you, Madam President. So, there seems to be a need for it, right? So the question I have is, when, at such time, if the need, right, were to dissipate,
Correct?
we've created these positions, right? How easy or difficult is it then to?
It's a legal process, but if the employees are satisfactory, there are no performance issues, we can still lay off staff due to lack of work, lack of funds. And so if there is, quote, lack of work, there is a layoff procedure that we can put in place. These folks also will, there's a probationary period, but we trust their performance will be satisfactory. But as our enrollment perhaps will decrease over a period of time, if sales decrease to a point where we don't need as many people, we can lay them off.
What exactly did you mean by continued refinement of state and federal?
Food's better.
food options?
Kids, food's better. Tastes better.
Okay.
Yeah, getting away from the Pronto Pups and getting to salad bars and such. The kids like it more. You may be, the unasked question is, why not Tam High? Tam High has had an unfilled 2-hour position that we just filled, so we hope that filling of that 2-hour position will deal with their slight increase down there too. They haven't increased as much because they sit across the street from various eateries, but they too have gone up in sales a bit.
We've heard complaints in the past about the quality of the food, but this indicates that more kids are eating food, or we have more kids, so
I think it's a little bit of both, to tell you the truth, a little bit of both. There are more students on our campuses, but I am serious when I say that Elena Dibble works very hard to improve the quality of offering to the students. She does listen to what they have to say.
Laura, do you think this will impact the Conscious Kitchen initiative at all, or?
I can speak to that too,
Yeah.
if you'd like
Oh,
me
good.
to.
Yeah, I'd rather hear from Lars because I have no idea.
Conscious Kitchen, as you may be aware, is a grant-funded program based in Marin City, and it's a wonderful concept. It's primarily an elementary-based system. It is grant-funded, not necessarily applicable to our schools. And at the same time, we have a contractual obligation with our CSA employees. We have food service contract with our own folks, so we can't just bring in another food service without significant
absolutely.
negotiation. But and I've spoken to Elena about Conscious Kitchens. Is it conscientious or Conscious Kitchen?
Conscious.
Conscious Kitchen.
Like not unconscious.
Yeah. It doesn't appear to be as applicable to the high school level as it is to elementary level, particularly the scale. It's really it's like a farm to table concept in Marin City, local growers and so forth, local food producers, and the food is
And they try to make it like a project-based learning.
Yeah.
And when Laura and I met with them, we were invited with J.C. Farr and others to the Willow Creek Center. What they were envisioning, and a couple of their community members in Mill Valley were interested in it and helping it grow, that it could slowly grow to include even a culinary class, business type class of how to do a restaurant, And there could be certifications of food preparation but working alongside the district staff and not taking jobs away, but working with them and supplementing it. And also they were looking at it as a way to keep kids on campus. So they were trying to look at it in a way that would be more applicable to the high school. So it's intriguing, but they were very aware that, we have staff and there's multiple issues, and I just was wondering if
Happy to speak to David and Tara and Cabinet about this, and if there is, we haven't heard much from JC since it's been quite some time, but if there remains an interest, we certainly can talk about it. But it would require significant conversation with our other employee group.
Right. And I think Aaron's been in the loop from what I understand. But anyway, I was just a question, because we just recently, I guess it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, we met with them and then it came up. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions before we take a vote?
No.
Do I have a motion to approve the additional 4-hour position at Redwood High School and increase an existing 4-hour position by 4 hours at Drake High School?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor? Aye. We're getting tired, so
Thank you. No.
one more.
Much appreciated. One more.
Yeah.
As you are aware, the California Clean Energy Jobs Act, or Prop 39, what that did was essentially shift corporate income tax code, and that allowed some funds to be moved into the California General Fund specific to the Clean Energy Job Creation Fund. And from that Clean Energy Job Creation Fund, the legislature can appropriate up to $550 million annually for eligible projects in school districts. So we, as a school district, have Prop 39 funds, and Daniel can give us the exact figure of what that is if you have that question. But we do have a Prop 39 plan that was put together under the past administrative structure of the TAM district. I've taken a look at it along with David O'Connor prior to going out with an RFP. And it needs some revision, and it needed a fresh set of eyes, because there were some projects on that plan that we feel weren't a priority, particularly based on our recent FMP endeavor. So what we did is, as you are aware, we put out an RFP for energy consulting services. Those services are free to the district. They come in 2 forms. There is a county organization, not County Office of Ed, but the County of Marin. They are the Marin Energy Management Team, and they are put in place to assist public entities like ours to put together energy efficiency plans. So the bulk of the consulting service work is free to the district, as it's covered by the Marin Energy team, that management team. The remaining consulting services that may not be applicable to that energy team can be paid for by our Prop 39 funds. And so there will be no impact to the general fund for this scope of work. As you see in the Kenwood Energy scope of work proposal, that they can look at energy efficient projects, but they can't, for whatever reason, I don't know, they can't look at solar energy. And so we do have interest in expanding our solar arrays at other sites throughout our school district. So that work would likely be billed back to Prop 39 funds to look at future projects like that. So Kenwood Energy, because I know, Barbara, you had a question. I saw an email. Kenwood Energy potentially could charge for their service, but the charge it would come to the school district as our responsibility, but it would be paid for out of Prop 39 funds, not from our general fund in any way, shape, or form. And the bulk of their billing would actually go to that energy management team at the County of Marin. So we're hopeful that you will choose to approve Kenwood Energy. There's a cost maximum here of $15,000 and change, so it's not a significant cost for Prop 39 funds to bear.
From Prop 39 funds.
From Prop 39 funds, yes. And the goal is twofold. One, to take a look at our Prop 39 plan and quite frankly, do a bit of reshuffling and improve the project list there. And secondly, as we've talked about via the FMP, take a look at larger scale energy efficiency projects that would eat into that FMP list of needs and wants, short of having to go out for a bond, because there are many other avenues of funding available to the school district, short of asking the taxpayers for more. So we think this is a worthwhile endeavor. It's money well spent from our Prop 39 money, not from district general fund. So I respectfully ask that you approve Kenwood Energy with regard to their energy efficiency proposal.
What is the total funding from Prop 39 for our district? Did you find that, Daniel?
Yes. The balance we have as a first enter is $400,000. We take $23,000 of that for indirect cost. So.
Thank you.
I want to say it was
He slips in the answers everywhere. Bert.
I think it's 363 when I say what I have available. That's what I've been looking at for lighting efficiency and other projects like that.
Isn't there a deadline to utilize our prop
26th, yeah. That's
of
why.
2018?
Yeah, of 18. So it's important we get this passed
see. So we can
because
really
we want to
move
make
quick,
revisions
yeah.
to the plan. And there's another $47,000 available that we have yet to access that I also want to grab. So we've got to have that done by the 26th of February. So this puts us on the road to doing that.
Not that you'll have this answer, but will the new potential tax reform have any impact on this? Or will it hit us midstream potentially?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I
know.
truly don't know.
That's right. Any other questions or comments?
I forget, isn't this the same guy who helped us with?
It is, yeah.
With the,
It's on here.
I just
I
had
saw
a
it.
meeting with him last week. Don't tell him I can't remember his name.
I read it.
I'll think of it the minute you bang the gavel at the meeting's over.
he did
But,
that project, he was the project
I had a
manager
meeting
for
with
the.
him last
yeah.
week, and yeah, he is the person who worked with the district on the Redwood Solar Array.
He was good.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to tell you, I had an hour with him, and I felt it was one of the more productive meetings I've had in the last 6 months.
He was good.
Bundle of energy, exceptionally well-versed in all of this. I think will be a huge help to the district. And feels like this is a place that good work has been done, and he'd like to continue that, so. And I will think of his name and send it to you.
It's in here somewhere.
It is, and I'm embarrassed I can't remember it, to tell you the truth.
Any more comments or questions? Can I have a motion for the board to approve Kenwood Energy contract for energy efficiency consulting services?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. Should also mention very quickly that this was one of 9 responses we received from that RFPQ, so we felt good about.
Oh, that's really good. We did get a
wide array
lot.
of people to choose from, and these folks came out on top.
Okay. Okay.
Was not the low bid, but there were reasons that we.
Well, no, you
we
get the
made-
best
we
one.
went this way.
Best one.
Thank you.
Thank you. So before we adjourn, there's a gentleman in the back. Would you like to come up to the podium? I can tell he'd like to do that. You betcha. He's happy to have his wife back.
I brought a little
Yeah.
present here for the.
Yeah, welcome.
It's the former president, isn't that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
well,
can
good
keep
luck.
calling me Madam
I don't have
President,
a
though.
husband, so I'll be okay. Thank you.
Laura doesn't like flowers, but I know she likes this.
Thank you. I'll share. Oh.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Well, thank you very much.
I'm
I'm gonna.
Yeah. Who is he?
Yeah. So what I recommend is that we also forego the trustee reports so that our former president can enjoy her chocolate and get home. And are all of you disappointed, or do you want to stay and talk about what you've been doing the last few weeks?
No, we're good.
January, though?
Can we do it in January? I mean, if you'd like to, like, or Barbara, would you like to give your report?
No, it's not necessary, but January I would.
Oh, we will, yeah. It's just that it's 10 after 9 and.
That's right.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. This meeting's adjourned.